The nurse's eyes went wide when I calmly told her I wouldn't be paying the $11,000 hospital bill she was calling about. Mom, she stuttered. This is for your grandson's delivery. The charges are legitimate. I know they are, I replied, taking a slow sip of my morning coffee. But you see, I never authorized those charges. I never signed anything. And I certainly never agreed to pay for a birth I wasn't even allowed to witness. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Ma'am, our records show your signature on the financial responsibility forms. That's interesting, I said, leaning back in my kitchen chair because at the exact time those forms were supposedly signed, I was driving through a snowstorm in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, about 600 miles away from your hospital. Another pause, longer this time. Ma'am, are you saying someone forged your signature? That's exactly what I'm saying, and I have GPS records, gas station receipts, and traffic camera footage to prove it. I'd like to speak with your fraud department, please. Before we go any further with this story, I need you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now because you're not going to believe how deep this rabbit hole goes. Drop a comment below telling me if you've ever had a family member betray your trust like this, and smash that like button if you think karma is real. Because what happened to my daughter-in-law proves that what goes around absolutely comes around. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. 3 months earlier, I was living a perfectly peaceful life in my retirement community in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'd worked 40 years as a hospital administrator, raised 2 children on my own after my husband passed away when the kids were still in elementary school, and finally, at 67 years old, I was enjoying the fruits of my labor. My days consisted of morning yoga, lunch with friends, volunteering at the local animal shelter, and video calls with my son Marcus, who lived up in Portland, Oregon, with his wife Vanessa. Marcus had always been my baby, even though he was 34 years old, 6'2", and built like the college football player he used to be. He was kind, gentle, maybe a little too trusting, but that's how I raised him to see the good in people. When he called me on a Tuesday evening in late August, I could hear the excitement in his voice before he even said hello. Mom, he practically shouted into the phone, we're pregnant. I dropped the book I'd been reading and felt my heart swell with a joy I hadn't experienced in years. Oh, Marcus, that's wonderful. When did you find out? Just this morning. Vanessa took 3 tests to be sure. Mom, we're going to have a baby, and you're going to be a grandmother. I won't lie to you, I cried, happy tears streaming down my face as I listened to my son talk about nursery colors and baby names and all the dreams he had for this child. Vanessa got on the phone a few minutes later, her voice sweet and warm. Carol, she said, using the familiar name she'd called me since she and Marcus got married 4 years ago. We want you to be a huge part of this baby's life. We're going to need all the help we can get. Of course, I told her, I'll be there whenever you need me, just say the word. The pregnancy progressed normally from what Marcus told me during our weekly calls. Vanessa had morning sickness for the first trimester. They found out they were having a boy in the second trimester. And by the third trimester, they'd settled on the name Connor James after both of his grandfathers. I sent packages every few weeks, baby clothes, books, toys, everything a first-time grandmother dreams of buying. I'd even started planning a trip to Portland for after the baby was born, looking at flights and hotels, counting down the days until I could hold my grandson. Then in late February, with Vanessa's due date approaching in mid-March, I got the call that would change everything. It was Vanessa and not Marcus, which was unusual since she rarely called me directly. Carol, her voice sounded strained. The baby's coming early. I'm having contractions and the doctor says we need to go to the hospital soon. Oh my goodness, I said, standing up from my couch. Is Marcus with you? He's at work, but he's on his way home, Carol. I know this is a lot to ask, but would you want to come up for the birth? I know you'd planned to visit after Connor was born, but I'd really love to have you here. Marcus would too. My heart started racing. Would I want to be there? Of course I wanted to be there. Vanessa, I'd be honored. When should I leave? As soon as you can, she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. I'm scared, Carol, and I just feel like having you here would make everything better. I'm booking a flight right now, I told her. I'll text you my arrival information as soon as I have it. I hung up and immediately opened my laptop to search for flights. The earliest flight I could get was the next morning at 6 a.m., arriving in Portland at 9:30. I texted Vanessa the details, and she responded with a heart emoji and the words, "Thank you so much, Mom." I spent the rest of that evening packing a suitcase, my hands shaking with excitement and nervousness. I was going to be there when my grandson was born. I was going to be one of the first people to hold him, to see Marcus become a father, to witness the continuation of our family line. I packed my nicest outfits. I wanted to look good in the first photos with Connor. I packed gifts for Vanessa and Marcus. A beautiful blanket I'd been crocheting for months. Some expensive lotions and bath products for Vanessa's recovery. A watch for Marcus to commemorate becoming a father. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning with anticipation. The flight the next morning felt endless, even though it was only 2.5 hours. I kept checking my phone for updates from Marcus or Vanessa, but there was nothing, which I assumed meant Vanessa's contractions had slowed down or stopped. False labor, perhaps. When I landed in Portland and turned off airplane mode, I had a text from Marcus. Mom, Vanessa's contractions stopped. False alarm, but we're so glad you're coming. Can't wait to see you. I felt a mixture of relief and slight disappointment. Relief that Vanessa and the baby were okay, disappointment that I wouldn't be meeting Connor quite yet, but I was already here and I was going to make the most of it. I took the light rail from the airport toward the address Marcus had given me, watching the city pass by through rain-streaked windows, typical Portland weather. When I arrived at their apartment building in the suburbs, Marcus was waiting outside, his face breaking into a huge smile when he saw me climbing out of the rideshare car. Mom, he wrapped me in one of his bear hugs that lifted me off my feet. I'm so glad you're here. I held on to my son, feeling grateful for this moment. Where's Vanessa? I asked. Resting upstairs. She had a rough night with the contractions, but she's excited to see you. We went up to their third-floor apartment, a modest two-bedroom place that Marcus had mentioned they were outgrowing now with the baby coming. Vanessa was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her pregnant belly prominent under the soft fabric. She smiled when she saw me, but something about it seemed off. Strained, maybe. Carol, she said, standing up slowly, thank you so much for coming all this way. Of course, sweetheart, I said, moving to hug her gently. How are you feeling? Tired, she admitted, and a little embarrassed that the contractions stopped. I really thought this was it. Better safe than sorry, I told her, settling into the armchair across from the couch. We spent the afternoon talking about the nursery, which Marcus showed me with obvious pride, the tiny clothes folded in drawers, the crib assembled and waiting, the changing table stocked with diapers and wipes. It was perfect, exactly what I'd imagined for my first grandchild. That evening, Marcus ordered Thai food for dinner and we sat around their small dining table talking about everything and nothing. Work, friends, family gossip, baby preparations. Vanessa was quieter than usual, occasionally wincing and putting a hand on her belly. You okay? I asked after one particularly noticeable wince. Just Braxton Hicks, she said. Practice contractions? They've been happening a lot. Maybe you should call your doctor, Marcus suggested. But Vanessa shook her head. They said this was normal. Unless they get regular and painful, we shouldn't worry. I stayed in a hotel that night, a nice place about 10 minutes from their apartment that I'd booked for a week, figuring I'd stay through the birth and the first few days of Connor's life before heading home. Marcus had offered to let me stay with them, but their second bedroom was set up as the nursery, and I didn't want to impose by taking their couch. I'll be close by if you need me, I assured them when Marcus dropped me off at the hotel. Call anytime, day or night. The call came at 2:17 in the morning. I was deep asleep when my phone started buzzing on the nightstand. I grabbed it, my heart pounding. Mom, it was Marcus, his voice tight with stress. Vanessa's water broke. We're heading to the hospital now. I'm on my way, I said, already throwing off the covers and reaching for my clothes. St. Mary's Medical Center, Marcus said. Labor and delivery is on the 4th floor. We'll see you soon. I got dressed faster than I had in years, pulling on comfortable pants and a sweater, brushing my teeth, grabbing my purse and the bag of gifts I'd packed for the hospital. I was in a rideshare within 10 minutes, giving the driver the hospital address and asking him to please hurry. The streets of Portland were empty at this hour, streetlights reflecting off wet pavement as we drove through the quiet city. My mind was racing with excitement and nerves. I was going to meet my grandson today. I was going to be there for one of the most important moments of my son's life. We arrived at St. Mary's Medical Center just before 3 a.m. I rushed through the lobby to the elevators, pressing the button for the 4th floor repeatedly, as if that would make it arrive faster. When the doors opened on the labor and delivery floor, I approached the nurse's station. "I'm looking for Vanessa Martinez," I said to the nurse behind the desk. She was just admitted. "I'm the baby's grandmother." The nurse checked her computer. "Yes, Mrs. Martinez is here, but she's asked for no visitors right now except for her husband." "Oh," I said, surprised. "I'm sure she meant no visitors except family. I'm her mother-in-law. I just flew in from Arizona." The nurse gave me a sympathetic look. "I'm sorry, but the patient was very specific. Only her husband is allowed in the delivery room." "I understand that," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I don't need to be in the delivery room. I just want to be nearby, maybe in the waiting area." Of course, the nurse gestured to a small waiting room down the hall. "You're welcome to wait there. I'll let Mr. Martinez know you've arrived." I settled into an uncomfortable plastic chair in the waiting room, surrounded by outdated magazines and a television playing the news on mute. I sent Marcus a text. "I'm here, in the waiting room. Let me know if you need anything." An hour passed with no response. Then another hour. I watched the sky start to lighten through the waiting room windows. The sun rising over Portland on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. At 6:30 a.m., a nurse came into the waiting room. "Are you Mrs. Carol Martinez?" "Yes." I stood up quickly. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. You have a healthy grandson, born at 6:14 a.m., 7 pounds, 9 ounces. "Oh, thank God." I felt tears spring to my eyes. "When can I see him?" The nurse hesitated. "Mr. Martinez asked me to tell you that they need some time to bond as a family. He'll call you later about visiting." I sat back down heavily. Time to bond as a family. I was family. I was Connor's grandmother. How much time are we talking about? "I don't know. I'm sorry. That's all the information I have." I sat in that waiting room for another 3 hours, watching other families come and go, watching new fathers emerge from delivery rooms with huge smiles to announce births to waiting relatives, watching grandparents get escorted back to meet new babies. But not me. I checked my phone constantly, but there were no messages from Marcus. At 9:45 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I walked back to the nurse's station. "Excuse me," I said to a different nurse than before. "I'm trying to see my grandson, Connor Martinez. Can you please check if his parents are ready for visitors now?" The nurse clicked through her computer. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Martinez is resting and has asked for continued privacy. Can I at least see my son Marcus, just to congratulate him?" "I'll send a message to the room," the nurse said kindly. "Please wait in the waiting area." 20 minutes later, Marcus appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. He looked exhausted, his hair messy, his eyes red, but there was a glow about him that made my heart ache, the glow of new fatherhood. "Mom," he said quietly, walking over to me. I stood up and hugged him. "Congratulations, sweetheart. How's Vanessa? How's Connor?" "They're both perfect," Marcus said, but his voice was strained. "When can I meet him?" I asked, pulling back to look at my son's face. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, the Vanessa's really overwhelmed right now. The delivery was harder than she expected, and she's just not up for visitors." "I'm not a visitor, Marcus. I'm your mother. I'm Connor's grandmother." "I know." He ran a hand through his hair. "I know, but she specifically asked me to tell you that she needs a few days to recover before having anyone visit." A few days. I felt like I'd been slapped. "Marcus, I flew here from Arizona because Vanessa called me and asked me to come for the birth." "I know, and we appreciate that, but things change. She's emotional and tired, and I need to respect her wishes." "What about your wishes? Don't you want your mother to meet your son?" "Of course I do." Marcus's voice cracked slightly. "But I have to support my wife right now. She just went through labor. Her needs come first." I took a deep breath, trying to control the hurt and anger rising in my chest. "Fine," I said quietly. "How long is a few days?" "I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 days, maybe a week. I'll call you when she's ready." "A week. I'll call you when she's ready." "A week. I'm staying at the hotel," I said, my voice hollow. "Let me know." I walked past my son and out of the waiting room, down the hall to the elevators, my vision blurred with tears. I refused to let fall until I was alone. I had flown across 3 states because my daughter-in-law specifically asked me to be here for my grandson's birth, and now I was being shut out completely with no explanation. Just vague mentions of Vanessa being tired and overwhelmed. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside, finally letting the tears come as the doors closed. I cried all the way down to the lobby, through the hospital exit, into the rideshare I called to take me back to my hotel. I cried in my hotel room, sitting on the edge of the bed, feeling more confused and hurt than I'd felt in years. What had I done wrong? Why had Vanessa called me begging me to come if she was just going to refuse to let me meet Connor? Nothing about this made sense. I tried to sleep but couldn't, my mind spinning with questions and hurt feelings. Around 2 p.m., I ordered room service, soup that I barely touched. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a message from Marcus saying it had all been a misunderstanding, that I could come meet Connor now. But there was nothing. The next day was worse. I woke up with a headache from crying, my eyes puffy and red. I texted Marcus. "Good morning, just checking in. How is everyone today?" He responded an hour later. "Everyone's good, Vanessa's resting. I'll let you know about visits soon." That was it. No details, no timeline, no acknowledgement of how strange and hurtful this situation was. I spent another day in my hotel room watching television without seeing it, ordering food I didn't eat, feeling like I was in some kind of nightmare. This wasn't how becoming a grandmother was supposed to feel. I was supposed to be at the hospital holding Connor, taking pictures, helping Vanessa, supporting Marcus, being part of my family. Instead, I was alone in a hotel room, shut out for reasons I couldn't understand. On the third day, I decided to go to the hospital anyway. Maybe if I just showed up, Marcus would let me in. Maybe seeing me would remind him that I wasn't some stranger, I was his mother. I got dressed carefully, put on makeup to hide the evidence of my crying, and took a rideshare back to St. Mary's Medical Center. The fourth floor was busier during visiting hours, families everywhere, flowers and balloons and gift bags. I walked to the nurse's station with my shoulders back, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "I'm here to see Vanessa Martinez in room 423, I said to the nurse. "Are you on the visitor list?" "I'm her mother-in-law." "Let me check." The nurse clicked through her computer. Then her face changed. "I'm sorry, you're not on the approved visitor list." "There must be a mistake. I'm the baby's grandmother." "I understand, but the patient has specified who is allowed to visit and your name isn't on the list. Can you call the room and ask them, please? I'm sure if you tell them I'm here." The nurse looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I've been specifically instructed that you are not to be admitted to this patient's room." The words hit me like a physical blow. Specifically instructed that I was not to be admitted. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't Vanessa being tired. This was deliberate. I turned and walked away before the nurse could see the tears starting again, made it to the elevator, down to the lobby, outside into the Portland drizzle. I stood on the sidewalk, letting the rain mix with my tears, not caring that I was getting soaked. My phone rang. "Marcus." "Mom, the nurse just called and said you tried to visit." "Why would you do that after I asked you to wait?" "Because I don't understand what's happening, Marcus," I said, my voice breaking. "Why am I being shut out of my own grandson's life?" "You're not being shut out. Vanessa just needs space." "Space from what? What did I do?" "You didn't do anything, Mom. This isn't about you." "Then what is it about?" "Please, Marcus, help me understand." There was a long pause. "Vanessa has some anxiety about people being around the baby. She's worried about germs and bonding, and she just needs time." "That doesn't explain why she specifically put me on a do not admit list at the hospital, Marcus. That's not anxiety. That's deliberate exclusion." Another pause. Longer this time. I heard voices in the background, Vanessa saying something I couldn't make out. "Mom, I have to go. I'll call you later." "Marcus, wait." But he'd already hung up. I stood in the rain for another few minutes, then walked slowly back to my hotel, each step feeling heavier than the last. Back in my room, I changed into dry clothes and sat on the bed staring at my phone. Something was very wrong here, something beyond postpartum anxiety or tiredness. You don't specifically ban someone from visiting unless you have a reason, unless you're hiding something or planning something. My years as a hospital administrator kicked in, the analytical part of my brain that had served me well in my career. I started thinking about the timeline. Vanessa had called me urgently, practically begging me to come to Portland for the birth. Then immediately after Connor was born, I was shut out completely and put on a banned visitor list. Why ask me to come if the plan was to exclude me? Unless I was needed here for some reason that had nothing to do with being present for the birth. I opened my laptop and logged into my email, scrolling through messages from the past few days. There was nothing unusual, just the typical spam and newsletters. Then I checked my credit card statements, something I did regularly out of habit from my years managing hospital finances. My personal credit card showed normal charges, the flight, the hotel, some room service. But when I clicked on my secondary credit card, the one I rarely used and kept mainly for emergencies, my blood ran cold. There were charges I didn't recognize, nearly $8,000 worth of charges over the past 2 weeks. Medical equipment purchases, a payment to St. Mary's Medical Center, charges to baby stores I'd never been to. My hands started shaking as I clicked through each transaction. Someone had my credit card information and had been using it to make purchases, a lot of purchases, all related to Vanessa's pregnancy and Connor's birth. I immediately called my credit card company. Yes, I need to report fraudulent charges on my account. The representative was helpful, walking me through each suspicious transaction. Ma'am, it looks like these charges were made online. Do you recognize any of the IP addresses? No, I don't, I said, taking notes as she read off information. Several of these charges show a Portland, Oregon billing address. What's the address? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. The representative read off an address, Marcus and Vanessa's apartment. I hung up and sat very still, my mind racing. Vanessa had my credit card information somehow and had been using it to buy things for the baby and to pay hospital bills. But how did she get my information? I was always so careful about financial security. Then I remembered, about 3 months ago, Vanessa had called me asking for advice about baby registries. She'd said she wanted to add some items from my Amazon account because I had Prime and could get free shipping. I'd logged into my Amazon account while on the phone with her, reading off my password when she said she couldn't access the family sharing feature. She must have used that access to get my credit card information stored in Amazon. I felt sick. My daughter-in-law had stolen from me, had manipulated me into giving her access to my accounts, had used my own trust against me. And the invitation to Portland, was that part of it too? Get me out here, keep me isolated and confused while she racked up charges on my card? But why go through such an elaborate scheme? If she needed money, why not just ask? Marcus had a good job. They weren't wealthy, but they weren't struggling. Unless this wasn't about need, unless this was about something else entirely. I spent the rest of that day documenting everything, screenshots of the fraudulent charges, records of when Vanessa had called me about Amazon, notes about the timeline of events. By evening, I had a clear picture of at least part of what had happened. Vanessa had stolen my credit card information and used it to purchase thousands of dollars worth of baby items and pay medical bills. But I still didn't understand why I'd been summoned to Portland only to be excluded from seeing Connor. That piece didn't fit yet. My phone rang around 8 p.m. Marcus again. Mom, I'm sorry about earlier. I know this is hard for you. Marcus, I need you to be honest with me. Did Vanessa use my credit card without permission? Silence on the other end, long and damning. Marcus, I said, my voice steady. I have $8,000 in fraudulent charges on my credit card. All made from your apartment, all for baby purchases and hospital bills. What's going on? Marcus stammered. I don't know anything about that. Does Vanessa have access to my credit card information? Mom, I really don't know what you're talking about. Marcus James Martinez, I said, using his full name like I had when he was a child in trouble. Do not lie to me. Did your wife steal my credit card information? Another long pause, then quietly, she said he'd given her permission to use it. Permission? When exactly did I give permission for her to charge $8,000 to my card? I don't know the details, Mom. Vanessa handles all our finances. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Marcus, I never gave Vanessa permission to use my credit card. She stole my information when I helped her with Amazon. This is fraud. Mom, don't. There has to be an explanation. There is an explanation. Your wife is a thief. She's not a thief. She's my wife and the mother of my child. And apparently a criminal? Marcus, what else has she lied to you about? I could hear Vanessa's voice in the background again, louder this time, angry. Marcus said, I have to go. We're not done talking about this. Mom, just go home to Arizona. We'll figure this out later. Go home, I repeated. You want me to leave without even meeting my grandson? I think that's best, Marcus said, and his voice sounded hollow, like he was reading from a script. After everything that's happened, maybe you should just go home. Marcus, I flew here because your wife begged me to come. I've spent 3 days in a hotel being shut out of my own family, and now I find out she's been stealing from me. I'm not going anywhere until we resolve this. There's nothing to resolve, Marcus said, and now he sounded angry. You're causing problems for Vanessa when she's trying to recover from giving birth. You need to leave us alone. Causing problems, I said slowly. Marcus, she stole from me. We'll pay you back. Just go home. I hung up without saying goodbye, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. This wasn't my son talking. This was someone who'd been manipulated and coached by his wife. The Marcus I'd raised would never dismiss theft, would never choose a criminal over his own mother. I made a decision then: if they wanted me gone, fine, I'd go, but not before I made sure Vanessa faced consequences for her actions. I called my credit card company back. I'd like to file a formal fraud report and press charges if possible. The next morning, I checked out of my hotel and took a rideshare to the airport. I didn't tell Marcus I was leaving, didn't say goodbye. If he wanted me gone so badly, I'd grant that wish. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. On the flight back to Arizona, I couldn't stop thinking about Connor, my grandson who I'd never even seen except in one photo Marcus had texted me from the delivery room. A tiny baby with a squished face and dark hair. My grandson who I'd been specifically banned from meeting. What kind of mother does that to a grandmother? What kind of wife turns a son against his own mother? I knew the answer, the kind who was hiding something much bigger than credit card fraud. When I landed in Phoenix and turned my phone back on, I had a voicemail from an unknown Portland number. Mrs. Martinez, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Portland Police Department. I'm calling about a fraud report you filed involving credit card theft. Please call me back at your earliest convenience to discuss the case. I called her back immediately from the airport. Detective Chen, this is Carol Martinez returning your call. Mrs. Martinez, thank you for calling back. I have some questions about the fraud report you filed. Can you walk me through what happened? I spent 20 minutes explaining everything to Detective Chen: the Amazon password incident, the charges I didn't authorize, the timeline of being invited to Portland and then excluded from the hospital. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Mrs. Martinez, you mentioned being placed on a hospital banned visitor list. Do you know why? No, I said honestly. My daughter-in-law Vanessa claimed it was because she needed space to recover. But that doesn't explain why she specifically had me banned from even being allowed on the maternity floor. Have you had any conflicts with Mrs. Martinez prior to this? None. We've always had a cordial relationship, which is why her behavior has been so shocking. Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to be honest with you. Credit card fraud between family members is complicated to prosecute. These cases often get dismissed as misunderstandings. This wasn't a misunderstanding, detective. She deliberately accessed my Amazon account to steal my credit card information, then used it without my knowledge or permission. That's textbook fraud. I understand your frustration, Detective Chen said, and I do think there's a case here, but I need you to understand that if we pursue this, it could have serious consequences for your daughter-in-law, including possible jail time and separation from her newborn. Detective Chen, I said carefully, I'm not a vindictive person, but I also won't be stolen from and manipulated. If Vanessa faces consequences, those are consequences of her own choices, not mine. I respect that, the detective said. Let me do some investigating and I'll be back in touch. After we hung up, I sat in the airport terminal watching planes take off and land, feeling more alone than I'd felt since my husband died 20 years ago. My son had chosen his criminal wife over me. My grandson was being kept from me, and I was the one who had to go home alone while they played happy family with money they'd stolen from me. But I learned something important during my years as a hospital administrator. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to expose it completely, to shine light on all the dark corners until there's nowhere left for corruption to hide. If Vanessa thought she'd gotten away with stealing from me, she was about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating grandmothers who'd spent their careers dealing with fraud. I got home to Scottsdale late that evening, my house dark and empty, a stark contrast to what I'd imagined this week would be like. I'd pictured coming home with hundreds of photos of Connor, stories about holding him, plans for when Marcus and Vanessa would bring him to Arizona for visits. Instead, I had nothing but a growing sense that something was very wrong, something that went far beyond credit card fraud. I dropped my suitcase in the bedroom and went straight to my home office, turning on my computer and pulling out all the documentation I'd gathered. If Detective Chen was going to investigate this properly, I wanted to make sure she had everything she needed. I started going through my financial records more carefully, looking for anything else that seemed off. That's when I found it, a charge I'd initially missed because it was smaller, only $300. But the merchant name caught my eye: Oregon Department of Vital Records. I clicked on the transaction details, my heart starting to pound. The charge was dated 2 weeks before Connor was born, and according to the description, it was a rush fee for obtaining certified copies of birth certificates and other vital records. Why would Vanessa need certified copies of vital records, and why would she use my credit card to pay for them? I grabbed my phone and called my friend Patricia, who'd worked in hospital administration with me for years and now did consulting work for various medical facilities. Patricia picked up on the second ring, her warm voice immediately comforting. "Carol, how's the new grandbaby? I've been waiting for pictures." "Patricia," I said, my voice tight, "something's wrong and I need your expertise." "What kind of wrong?" "I think Vanessa might be involved in something beyond just credit card fraud, and I need to understand what someone could do with certified vital records they obtained fraudulently." There was a pause, then Patricia's voice became serious. "Carol, what exactly are you dealing with?" I explained everything: the credit card fraud, being excluded from the hospital, the charge for vital records. When I finished, Patricia let out a low whistle. "That's not good. Certified vital records can be used for all kinds of fraud, identity theft, creating fake identification, even claiming someone else's benefits or insurance. Could they be used to put someone else's name on hospital bills?" "Absolutely," Patricia said. "If someone had access to your vital records, social security number, birth certificate, they could potentially make you financially responsible for medical services you never authorized." Oh my God, I breathed. That's why she wanted me in Portland. Think about it, Carol. If Vanessa had your identifying information, she could put you down as financially responsible for Connor's birth, her hospital stay, all of it, and by having you physically present in Portland at the time, it would be harder for you to claim you had nothing to do with it. But the hospital would verify information, wouldn't they? They can't just accept someone's word that I'm financially responsible. In theory, yes, Patricia said. But in practice, especially during a busy delivery, if someone presents what looks like legitimate documentation and authorization, a lot of billing departments will accept it and sort it out later. They're focused on patient care, not fraud prevention. I felt sick. Vanessa hadn't wanted me at Connor's birth because she loved me or valued my presence. She'd wanted me there to use me, to set me up as financially responsible for expenses she couldn't or wouldn't pay herself. The exclusion from the hospital made perfect sense now. She couldn't risk me being in the room where I might overhear conversations about billing or see documents with my name on them. She'd needed me in Portland, but kept at a distance, present enough to be credible as someone involved in the birth arrangements, but isolated enough that I wouldn't discover what she was doing until it was too late. "Patricia," I said slowly, "how would I find out if my name is on any hospital billing documents?" "You could call St. Mary's Medical Center directly and ask to speak with their billing department. Tell them you've received some suspicious charges and want to verify what accounts have your name on them." "I'll do that first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you, Patricia." "Carol," she said gently, "be prepared for what you might find. If Vanessa went to this much trouble to get your vital records and have you present in Portland, she's likely stuck you with some significant bills." "I know. I'll call you after I talk to the hospital." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept running through scenarios in my mind. How much could Vanessa have charged to me? 5,000, 10,000, more? The average cost of childbirth in the United States was around $10,000 to $15,000 without insurance complications. But if there were complications, if Vanessa had a C-section or extended hospital stay, it could be much higher. At 8 a.m. the next morning, I called St. Mary's Medical Center and asked for the billing department. "This is Carol Martinez," I said when someone answered. "I need to verify some information about accounts that might have my name on them." "What's your date of birth and social security number?" I provided both, then waited while the billing representative searched her system. "Yes, Mrs. Martinez, I have you here as the financial guarantor for patient Vanessa Martinez, delivery and postpartum care." Financial guarantor, I repeated, keeping my voice steady. Can you tell me what that means exactly? It means you've agreed to be financially responsible for all charges related to Ms. Vanessa Martinez's medical care during her hospital stay. The total amount currently is $11,047. $11,000. And when exactly did I agree to this? According to our records, you signed financial responsibility documents on March 14th at approximately 9 p.m. March 14th was the day before Connor was born, the day I was sitting in my hotel room in Portland, the day I'd never set foot in St. Mary's Medical Center. I was not at your hospital on March 14th, I said, and I never signed any financial responsibility documents. The representative's voice became uncertain. Ma'am, we have documents here with your signature. Those documents are fraudulent. I never signed anything. I need to speak with your fraud department immediately. Please hold, the representative said. I was transferred 3 times before finally reaching someone in the hospital's fraud prevention office, a man named David Reeves who spoke with the careful tone of someone used to dealing with angry patients. Mrs. Martinez, I understand you're disputing financial responsibility for Vanessa Martinez's hospital bills. I'm not disputing them, Mr. Reeves. I'm reporting fraud. Someone forged my signature on those documents, and I have proof I wasn't even at your hospital when they were supposedly signed. What kind of proof? I have hotel records showing I was checked into a hotel across town. I have times receipts from room service. I have cell phone tower data. I was not at St. Mary's Medical Center on March 14th. Mr. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Martinez, these are serious allegations. Are you saying a family member committed fraud? I'm saying someone forged my signature and fraudulently assigned me financial responsibility for medical bills that aren't mine, yes. We'll need to investigate this. Can you send me the documentation you mentioned? I'll send everything today, I said. But I want to be very clear, I will not be paying these bills, and I expect your hospital to pursue whoever actually committed this fraud. We'll be in touch, Mrs. Martinez, Mr. Reeves said, and I could hear him typing notes. After hanging up, I immediately compiled everything I had: hotel receipts, room service bills with timestamps, credit card statements showing charges at locations across Portland on March 14th, everything that proved I couldn't have been at the hospital signing documents. I scanned it all and emailed it to David Reeves with a detailed explanation of the timeline. Then I called Detective Chen back. Detective, this is Carol Martinez. I have new information about the fraud case. What kind of information, Mrs. Martinez? My daughter-in-law didn't just steal my credit card information. She forged my signature on hospital documents to make me financially responsible for $11,000 in medical bills from Connor's birth. I heard Detective Chen's chair creak as she sat up. That's significantly more serious than credit card fraud. That's forgery and possibly identity theft. I have documentation proving I wasn't at the hospital when the forms were supposedly signed, and I've already reported it to the hospital's fraud department. Mrs. Martinez, I'm going to need you to come down to the station and file a formal report. This has expanded beyond a simple fraud case. When can you come? I can be there tomorrow, I said. I'll fly back to Portland tonight. That evening, I was back on a plane to Oregon, this time not with excitement about meeting my grandson, but with grim determination to make sure Vanessa faced consequences for what she'd done. I'd made the mistake of trusting her once, of believing that family meant something to her. I wouldn't make that mistake again. When I arrived in Portland late that night, I checked into a different hotel, one near the police station, and tried to get some sleep before my meeting with Detective Chen. The Portland Police Department was a gray concrete building downtown, busy even at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. I gave my name at the front desk and was escorted to Detective Chen's office, a small room with a desk covered in file folders and a window overlooking the parking lot. Detective Chen stood when I entered, a petite Asian woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Mrs. Martinez, thank you for coming in. Please sit down. We spent the next hour going through everything in detail: the Amazon password incident, the credit card charges, the hospital billing fraud, my exclusion from seeing Connor. Detective Chen took notes and asked detailed questions, her expression growing more serious as the full scope of Vanessa's deception became clear. Mrs. Martinez, she said when I'd finished, I need to ask you something. Do you know anything about your daughter-in-law's background before she married your son? I know she's from Seattle originally. She went to college in Oregon. Worked in healthcare administration before moving to Portland and meeting Marcus. Why? Detective Chen pulled out a file folder. Because I did some preliminary background research on Vanessa Martinez and I found some things that don't add up. What kind of things? Well, for starters, there's no record of anyone named Vanessa Martinez attending any colleges in Oregon during the time frame she would have been a student. Maybe she went by a different name. Maiden name, perhaps? That's what I thought, Detective Chen said. So I looked into her marriage records with your son. Her maiden name was listed as Vanessa Parker. Parker, I repeated. I don't think Marcus ever mentioned her maiden name. I searched for Vanessa Parker in Oregon college records and found nothing. I searched for her in Washington state where she claimed to be from and found nothing. I checked employment records for healthcare administration positions in the Pacific Northwest and found nothing. What are you saying, detective? I'm saying that either your daughter-in-law used a completely different name before meeting your son, or she's lying about her entire background. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. Why would someone lie about their education and work history? Lots of reasons, Detective Chen said. Maybe she doesn't have the qualifications she claimed. Maybe she's hiding a criminal past. Maybe she's not even who she says she is. This is insane, I said. Marcus would have checked. He would have asked for references, met her family. Did he meet her family? I thought back, trying to remember what Marcus had told me about Vanessa's relatives. He mentioned her parents once or twice, said they lived in Seattle but kept to themselves. He said Vanessa wasn't close with them because of some family drama. Did he ever actually meet them? Detective Chen pressed. I don't think so. I realized he said they didn't come to the wedding because her father was sick. Red flag, Detective Chen said. People who lie about their identities often claim their families are distant or estranged to avoid having to produce them. So what do we do now? I asked. I'm going to dig deeper into Vanessa's background, see what I can find. In the meantime, I need you to file formal charges for the credit card fraud and the hospital billing fraud. Are you willing to do that? Absolutely, I said, even knowing it could mean jail time for your grandson's mother? Detective, my loyalty is to my grandson, not to the woman who defrauded me and has been lying to my son. If Vanessa goes to jail, that's a consequence of her own choices. Detective Chen smiled slightly. I had a feeling you'd say that. Let's get the paperwork started. We spent another hour filling out forms and making official statements. By the time I left the police station, it was past noon, and I was emotionally exhausted. I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from Marcus and 2 text messages. Mom, we need to talk. Call me back. I didn't call him back immediately. Instead, I went to a coffee shop near my hotel and ordered lunch I didn't really want. Sitting by the window, watching Portland go about its business while my family fell apart. Finally, around 2 p.m., I called Marcus back. He answered on the first ring. Mom, where are you? I'm in Portland. What? Why? Why do you think, Marcus, I'm dealing with the fraud your wife committed against me? Mom, please, Vanessa said there was a misunderstanding about the credit cards. She thought you'd given her permission. A misunderstanding, I said, my voice cold. What about the hospital bills, Marcus? Did I misunderstand those too? What hospital bills? The $11,000 in medical bills she fraudulently put in my name by forging my signature on financial documents. There was silence then. That can't be right. It is right. I have the documentation. I reported it to the hospital and the police. Your wife committed multiple felonies. Marcus had a baby mom. She's not a criminal. Then how do you explain the forged documents, the stolen credit card information, the lies about her background? What lies about her background? I took a breath, trying to calm down. Marcus, when did you meet Vanessa's parents? I haven't met them yet, but that's because they don't exist. Detective Chen looked into Vanessa's background and found nothing. No college records, no employment records, no evidence that she is who she claims to be. That's ridiculous, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. Is it? Did you ever verify anything she told you about herself? Did you check references? Did you meet anyone from her past? She had references. I saw her resume. Did you call them? No, I trusted her. And look where that got you. Married to a woman who might be using a fake identity and is definitely a criminal. Mom, stop. Just stop. I heard the pain in his voice and felt the pang of sympathy, but I couldn't back down now. Marcus, I love you. You're my son, and I want what's best for you, but you need to face the truth about who you married. The truth is that I have a wife and a son, and my mother is trying to destroy my family. I'm trying to protect you. Can't you see that? By having my wife arrested, by telling me she's not who she says she is. That's not protection, Mom. That's destruction. Marcus, she stole from me. She committed fraud. These are facts, not attacks. I have to go, Marcus said abruptly. Vanessa needs me. Marcus wait, but he'd already hung up. I sat in that coffee shop feeling like I'd failed as a mother, like somehow I should have been able to make Marcus see reason, should have been able to protect him from Vanessa's manipulation. But I also knew that sometimes the only way people learn is by experiencing consequences, and Marcus was about to experience some very serious consequences of his choice to believe Vanessa over his own mother. My phone rang again, this time an unknown number. This is Carol Martinez. Mrs. Martinez, this is David Reeves from St. Mary's Medical Center. I've reviewed the documentation you sent, and I need to inform you that we're launching a full fraud investigation. Good, I said. What does that mean exactly? It means we're reviewing all the documents related to Vanessa Martinez's hospital stay. We're checking signatures against known samples. We're pulling security footage from the times when the financial documents were supposedly signed, and we're cooperating fully with the Portland Police Department's investigation. Thank you, Mr. Reeves. I appreciate you taking this seriously. Mrs. Martinez, I have to tell you, in 20 years of working in hospital administration, I've seen a lot of billing fraud, but I've never seen a case quite like this. The sophistication required to forge documents and create a false paper trail while also manipulating family dynamics to provide cover, this is highly unusual. You're telling me, I said grimly. We should have preliminary results from our investigation within a week. I'll be in touch. After hanging up, I realized I hadn't eaten the sandwich I'd ordered. It sat cold and untouched on the plate in front of me. I forced myself to eat half of it, knowing I needed to keep my strength up, then went back to my hotel to rest. That evening, Detective Chen called. Mrs. Martinez, I have some updates on the background investigation. What did you find? Let's just say Vanessa Martinez is definitely not who she's claimed to be. Can you come back to the station tomorrow morning? I'll be there at 9. I spent that night lying awake in the dark hotel room, wondering how Marcus was going to react when he learned the full truth about his wife, wondering if Connor would grow up knowing his grandmother or if Vanessa's lies had destroyed that relationship permanently. The next morning, I was back at the police station following Detective Chen to a small conference room where she'd laid out several file folders. Mrs. Martinez, before I show you what I found, I need to prepare you. This is going to be upsetting. I'm already upset, Detective. Just tell me. Detective Chen opened the first folder, revealing what looked like a police report. Vanessa Martinez, whose real name appears to be Vanessa Thornton, has a criminal record. A criminal record for what? Fraud, identity theft, forgery. She was arrested in Sacramento, California 6 years ago for running a romance scam where she'd create fake identities to date men, gain access to their finances, and steal from them. Oh my God, I breathed. She served 18 months in prison, was released 4 years ago, and apparently moved to Portland shortly after, where she met your son. Marcus has no idea. I'm sure he doesn't, Detective Chen said. People like Vanessa are very good at creating new identities and backstories. They're convincing because they've practiced their lies over and over. How many men did she do this to? At least 5 that we know of in California. She stole over $100,000 total before she was caught. And now she's doing it again, to my son, to my family. It appears so. Yes, the pattern is almost identical. Create a sympathetic backstory, establish a romantic relationship, gain trust, access financial information, commit fraud, and then disappear before consequences catch up. But she married Marcus, I said. She had his baby that's not disappearing. No, Detective Chen said slowly, but I think the plan might have been to disappear eventually, possibly after establishing legal claim to marital assets or gaining access to larger amounts of money. The baby, I said, realization dawning. She had Connor to create a legal connection to Marcus, to his assets, to our family. That's my theory, Detective Chen said. A child creates automatic inheritance rights, child support obligations, legal entanglements that could be exploited. We have to tell Marcus, I said. He needs to know who he's really married to. I agree, but Mrs. Martinez, you need to be prepared for the possibility that he won't believe you. Vanessa has spent years building trust with him. Breaking that conditioning isn't easy. He has to believe this. Look at the evidence. People believe what they want to believe, especially when the alternative is admitting they've been completely fooled. I thought about Marcus, my kind, trusting son who always wanted to see the best in people. The son who'd been raised to value family and loyalty above all else. How was he going to process the fact that his wife was a career criminal who targeted him deliberately? Detective, what happens now? Now I take this information to the district attorney's office and we build a case. With Vanessa's prior record and the evidence of fraud against you, we have a strong basis for charges. How long will that take? These things move slowly, probably a few weeks at minimum. In the meantime, I'd recommend you tell your son what we've discovered. I'll try, I said, though I wasn't optimistic about how that conversation would go. Detective Chen walked me out of the station, and as I stood on the steps in the cool Portland morning, I made a decision. I was going to Marcus and Vanessa's apartment to tell my son the truth, whether he wanted to hear it or not. I took a ride share to their building, my heart pounding as I walked up to the third floor and knocked on their door. It took a moment, but Marcus answered, his face going from surprised to guarded when he saw me. Mom, what are you doing here? We need to talk, Marcus. It's important. This isn't a good time, Vanessa's sleeping. And I don't care if Vanessa's sleeping, and I don't care if Vanessa's sleeping, this is about her. And you need to hear it. Marcus stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. What's so important that you just show up at our apartment after everything that's happened? I have information about Vanessa's past, about who she really is. Mom, if this is more conspiracy theories about her lying about her identity. It's not conspiracy theories, I said, pulling out my phone and opening the photo I'd taken of the police report. It's facts. Vanessa was arrested 6 years ago in California for fraud and identity theft. She served 18 months in prison. Her real name is Vanessa Thornton. Marcus took my phone, his face pale as he looked at the police report. Where did you get this? From Detective Chin. She's been investigating Vanessa's background as part of the fraud case. This could be fake, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. It's not fake, and you know it. Look at the details, Marcus. The physical description matches, the age matches, the pattern of crimes matches exactly what she's done to our family. Marcus handed my phone back, his hand shaking. Even if this is real, even if she made mistakes in her past, people can change. She's changed. Has she? Because the fraud she committed against me is exactly the same MO as her previous crimes: create trust, exploit relationships, steal money. She had my baby mom. She's my wife. She wouldn't. Wouldn't what, Marcus? Wouldn't lie to you, wouldn't steal from your family, wouldn't forge documents because she's already done all of those things. I saw tears in Marcus's eyes. What do you want me to do, Mom? Leave her, take Connor away from his mother? I want you to protect yourself and your son. I want you to face reality instead of living in denial. You don't understand what it's like, he said, his voice breaking. I love her. I built a life with her. We have a child together. I understand you feel trapped. But Marcus, this woman is a career criminal who targeted you deliberately. Your marriage, your entire relationship. It's built on lies. Stop. Just stop, Marcus said, backing toward his apartment door. I can't listen to this anymore. Marcus, please. No. Mom, you need to leave. You need to stop investigating Vanessa and trying to destroy our family. I'm trying to save our family by having my wife arrested, by telling me she's a criminal. That's not saving anything. The apartment door opened and Vanessa appeared, holding Connor in her arms. It was the first time I'd seen my grandson in person, and the sight of him took my breath away. He was beautiful, perfect, with dark hair and Marcus's nose. Carol, Vanessa said, her voice cold, you need to leave. I just want Marcus to know the truth about who you are. I'm his wife and the mother of his child. That's who I am. You're Vanessa Thornton, convicted felon, I said, meeting her eyes. You served 18 months in prison for fraud and identity theft. Marcus's face went even paler. Vanessa, is that true? It's complicated, Vanessa said. That was a different time in my life. I was young and made mistakes. Mistakes, I said. You ran a romance scam on 5 different men. Vanessa's eyes flashed with anger. You have no right to come here and attack me in my own home. I have every right to warn my son that he's married to a criminal. Get out, Vanessa said, her voice rising. Get out of our home right now or I'm calling the police. Call them, I said. I'm sure they'd be very interested in talking to you about the fraud charges you're facing. Marcus stepped between us. Connor starting to cry in Vanessa's arms. Both of you stop, Mom. You need to go, Vanessa. Let's go inside. Marcus, I said desperately, please listen to me. I can't do this right now, Marcus said, his eyes red. I need you to leave Mom. I looked at my son, at my grandson crying in the arms of a convicted criminal, at the family I was losing to lies and manipulation. Fine, I said quietly. I'll go. But Marcus, when the police arrest her, when the truth comes out and you realize I was right about everything, don't say I didn't warn you. I turned and walked down the hallway, down the stairs, out into the Portland morning, crying so hard I could barely see. I'd lost my son, maybe permanently, and I still hadn't been allowed to hold my grandson, hadn't been allowed to be part of his life. Back at my hotel, I called Patricia. It's worse than I thought. I told her everything, the criminal record, the confrontation at the apartment, Marcus's refusal to believe me. Oh, Carol, Patricia said sympathetically, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. He won't listen to me. He's completely under her control. All you can do is let the legal process play out. When Vanessa gets arrested and the evidence becomes public, Marcus will have to face the truth. But what if it's too late by then? What if she's already done more damage? Then that's Marcus's consequence for choosing to believe a liar over his own mother. Patricia said gently, you can't protect him from his own choices, Carol. I know, I never thought I'd lose my son like this. You haven't lost him permanently. Right now, he's confused and manipulated. But eventually, the truth wins. It always does. I hope you're right, I said. In the meantime, take care of yourself, come home to Arizona, let the police do their job. You're right, there's nothing more I can do here. I booked a flight home for that evening, packed my bags with a heavy heart, and left Portland for the second time, still without having held my grandson, still estranged from my son. The next 2 weeks were agonizing. I went through my normal routines in Scottsdale, yoga classes, lunch with friends, volunteering at the animal shelter, but my heart wasn't in any of it. I was waiting for news from Detective Chen, waiting for the legal process to move forward, waiting for Marcus to realize the truth. Finally, 3 weeks after my confrontation with Marcus and Vanessa, Detective Chen called. Mrs. Martinez, we're moving forward with charges against Vanessa Thornton. The district attorney has enough evidence to proceed with prosecution for identity theft, fraud, and forgery. When will she be arrested? Within the next 48 hours, I wanted to give you advance warning in case your son contacts you. Thank you, Detective. I appreciate everything you've done. Mrs. Martinez, there's something else you should know. When we executed a search warrant on the Martinez apartment, we found evidence of additional fraud. What kind of additional fraud? Vanessa had been using her son's identity to open credit cards and take out loans. He's responsible for over $60,000 in debt he didn't know about. Oh my God, poor Marcus. We also found documents suggesting Vanessa was planning to leave Portland with Connor in the next few months. She had a fake passport for the baby and plane tickets to Mexico. She was going to kidnap Connor? It appears so, yes. She was going to disappear with your grandson and leave your son with massive debt and no way to find his child. I sat down heavily on my couch, feeling sick. Vanessa wasn't just a thief. She was planning to destroy Marcus completely and steal his son. Detective, does Marcus know about any of this? Not yet. We'll be informing him when we arrest Vanessa. I thought you'd want to know first. Thank you. When should I expect Marcus to call? Probably within hours of the arrest. Be prepared, Mrs. Martinez. He's going to be devastated. I'll be ready, I said, though I had no idea how to prepare for my son's world falling apart. The call came at 11 p.m. 2 nights later. I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang, Marcus's name on the screen. Marcus? I answered immediately. Mom? His voice was wrecked, broken. They arrested Vanessa. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. You were right about everything. She's not who she said she was. She stole from me. She was going to leave and take Connor. I know. Detective Chen told me. I have $60,000 in debt that I didn't create. My credit is destroyed. My wife is in jail. And I have a 3-week-old baby I don't know how to take care of alone. Marcus, take a breath. We're going to figure this out. How, Mom? How do we figure this out? My entire life is a lie. First, you're going to take care of Connor. Do you have everything you need for him? I think so. Vanessa handled most of the baby stuff. Okay, make a list of what you need, and I'll order it online. It'll be delivered tomorrow. What about money? I can't afford rent and bills and baby supplies with all this debt. We'll deal with the debt. I'll help you find a lawyer to dispute the fraudulent accounts. And Marcus, I'm going to send you money for expenses. Mom, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. You're my son, and Connor is my grandson. I'm going to help you. I'm so sorry, Mom, Marcus said, crying now. I should have listened to you. I should have believed you. Marcus, Vanessa is a professional con artist. She's been doing this for years. You couldn't have known. I should have known. I should have checked her background. I should have questioned things. Beating yourself up doesn't help Connor. Right now, that baby needs you to be strong and focused. I don't know how to be a single parent, Marcus said, his voice small. You learn, just like every parent learns, and you're not alone. You have me. Can you come to Portland, Mom? I know I don't deserve it after how I treated you, but I need help. I'll book a flight for tomorrow, I said immediately. I'll be there as soon as I can. Thank you. I love you. Mom, I love you too, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet house feeling a mixture of sadness for what Marcus was going through and relief that he finally knew the truth, finally understood that I'd been trying to protect him all along. I booked a red-eye flight to Portland, packed a bag, and tried to get a few hours of sleep before heading to the airport. When I arrived at Marcus's apartment the next morning, he looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, his eyes red from crying. He opened the door and immediately pulled me into a hug, holding on like I was the only solid thing in his collapsing world. I'm so sorry, Mom, he kept saying. I'm so sorry. It's okay, I said, rubbing his back like I had when he was a child. We're going to get through this. Connor was asleep in a bassinet in the living room, and I finally, after weeks of waiting, got to hold my grandson. He was perfect, warm and soft and smelling like baby soap. And in that moment, all the pain and frustration of the past month felt worth it. Hi, Connor, I whispered. Your grandma's here now. Everything's gonna be okay. Over the next few days, I helped Marcus establish a routine with Connor, showing him how to prepare bottles, change diapers, soothe a crying baby, all the skills he needed as a suddenly single father. We also started dealing with the financial mess Vanessa had created. I hired a lawyer to help Marcus dispute the fraudulent debts, and we filed reports with credit agencies to begin the process of clearing his name. Detective Chen kept us updated on Vanessa's case. With her prior criminal record and the overwhelming evidence of fraud, the prosecutor was confident about getting a conviction. One evening, about a week after Vanessa's arrest, Marcus was feeding Connor a bottle when he suddenly said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" Of course. How did you know? How did you figure out Vanessa wasn't who she said she was? I didn't at first, I said, sitting down across from him. I just knew something felt wrong the way she invited me to Portland, then excluded me from the hospital. It didn't make sense. But you kept investigating even when I told you to stop. Because I knew if something seemed wrong, it probably was, and I wasn't going to let anyone hurt my family without consequences, even when it meant I shut you out and said horrible things to you. Marcus, you were being manipulated by a professional con artist. I never blamed you for believing her. I blamed myself for being so stupid, for not seeing the signs. What signs could you have seen? She's been doing this for years. She knows exactly how to appear trustworthy. I should have introduced her to you earlier, should have brought her to Arizona to meet you before we got married. Would that have made a difference? I asked gently. Would I have seen through her act? Probably not, Marcus admitted. She's very convincing. Exactly. So stop blaming yourself and focus on moving forward. What does moving forward look like, Mom? I have a baby, massive debt, a criminal wife. How do I build a life from this? One day at a time, I said, right now Connor needs you to be present and stable. That's your first priority. Everything else we can figure out as we go. What about Vanessa? What happens to her? She'll go to trial, probably be convicted given her record and the evidence. She'll go to prison. And Connor grows up without his mother. Connor grows up without a criminal who was planning to kidnap him and disappear to Mexico, I said firmly. That's not the same as growing up without a mother. That's growing up safe from someone who would have destroyed his life. You're right, Marcus said, but his face was sad. It's just hard to reconcile the woman I thought I married with the reality of who she actually is. I know, sweetheart, that kind of betrayal takes time to process. Do you think I'll ever be able to trust anyone again? Yes, I said confidently. Right now it feels impossible. But eventually you'll heal. You'll learn to recognize red flags, and you'll find someone worthy of your trust. I hope so, because right now I feel like I'll never let anyone close again. That's the trauma talking, give yourself time. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, Connor falling asleep in Marcus's arms, my grandson safe with his father, my family broken but beginning to heal. Over the next few weeks, I stayed in Portland helping Marcus adjust to single parenthood while the legal case against Vanessa moved forward. Detective Chen called regularly with updates. The district attorney had charged Vanessa with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, forgery, and attempted kidnapping based on the fake passport and plane tickets they'd found. With her prior conviction, she was looking at significant prison time. Marcus struggled emotionally. Some days he was angry at Vanessa for the lies and betrayal. Other days he was sad about the loss of what he thought his life would be, but through it all, he was devoted to Connor, learning to be the father his son needed. I'd never been prouder of him than watching him navigate this impossible situation with grace and determination. One afternoon, while Connor napped and Marcus was at a meeting with his lawyer, I got a call from an unknown Portland number. This is Carol Martinez. Mrs. Martinez, this is Stephanie Chen. I'm Vanessa Thornton's attorney. I stiffened. What can I do for you? My client would like to speak with you. She's willing to provide information about her accomplices in exchange for consideration at sentencing. Accomplices? What accomplices? Vanessa didn't act alone in targeting your family. There are others involved, and she's willing to provide names and evidence if you'll agree to support a reduced sentence. I'm not agreeing to anything, I said firmly. Your client committed serious crimes against my family. I understand, but the information she has could help prevent other families from being victimized. What kind of information? There's a network of people running romance scams and family fraud schemes across the western states. Vanessa was part of that network. She has details about their operations, their targets, their methods. I was quiet for a moment, thinking if Vanessa's information could help catch other criminals like her, maybe it was worth considering. I'll think about it, I said finally. But I'm not making any promises. That's all I ask, Attorney Chen said. Can I give you my number in case you want to discuss this further? I took down her information and hung up, feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted Vanessa to face the maximum consequences for what she'd done, but another part of me, the part that had spent years in hospital administration trying to prevent fraud and protect vulnerable people, thought about all the families that could be saved if this criminal network was exposed. I called Detective Chen. Detective, I just got a call from Vanessa's attorney about a potential cooperation deal. What do they offer? Information about a fraud network in exchange for a reduced sentence? Is this legitimate? It could be, Detective Chen said. We've suspected for a while that these romance scams are coordinated rather than isolated incidents. If Vanessa can provide solid evidence, it might be worth pursuing. But I'd be helping the woman who tried to destroy my family. You'd be helping prevent her from destroying other families, Detective Chen said. That's different. I need to think about this. Take your time. But Mrs. Martinez, remember that Vanessa's going to prison regardless. The question is whether she goes for 20 years or 15 years, and whether her information helps us stop others like her. When Marcus came home that evening, I told him about the call from Vanessa's attorney. What do you think I should do? Mom, that's not my decision, Marcus said. You're the one she hurt the most. She hurt you too? She stole from you, lied to you, planned to kidnap your son? I know, but I also know that you've always believed in doing what's right, even when it's hard. If Vanessa's information can help other people, maybe that's more important than revenge. This isn't about revenge, Marcus. It's about justice. Isn't there room for both? Justice for what she did to us and protection for future victims. I looked at my son, surprised by his maturity and insight. When had he gotten so wise? You're right, I said. I'll call her attorney tomorrow. The next day, I met with Stephanie Chen and a prosecutor from the district attorney's office to discuss what Vanessa was offering. We met in a conference room at the courthouse, the same building where Vanessa's trial would eventually take place. Mrs. Martinez, the prosecutor said, I'm David Walsh. I'm handling the case against Vanessa Thornton. Thank you for coming in. I understand she has information about a criminal network. That's correct, Attorney Chen said. My client is willing to provide detailed information about a sophisticated fraud operation that's been targeting families across Oregon, Washington, California, and Nevada. What kind of information specifically? Names of at least 8 other individuals involved in the network, details about their methods and targets, financial records showing how money was moved and laundered, and testimony about the organizer who recruits and trains people like Vanessa. In exchange for a recommendation for a 15-year sentence instead of 25 years and consideration for parole after 10 years. Prosecutor Walsh looked at me. Mrs. Martinez, you're the primary victim in this case. I won't agree to any deal without your consent. I took a deep breath. If this information leads to arrests and prevents other families from going through what mine went through, then I support the deal, but I have conditions. What conditions? I want Vanessa to admit publicly what she did. I want her to apologize to Marcus, and I want assurances that she'll have no contact with Connor for at least 10 years. Those terms are acceptable, Attorney Chen said. Prosecutor Walsh nodded. I'll draw up the agreement. If Vanessa's information is as valuable as claimed, we'll proceed with the recommended sentence. 1 week later, I sat in a small room at the county jail across a metal table from Vanessa. It was the first time I'd seen her since her arrest, and she looked different, smaller somehow, without the confidence and manipulation that had defined her before. Carol, she said quietly, thank you for coming. I'm not here for you, I said. I'm here because your attorney said you wanted to apologize to Marcus, and you wanted me to witness it. I do, but first I want to explain. I don't need explanations, Vanessa. I need the truth. The truth is that I never meant for things to go this far, Vanessa said. When I met Marcus, I was supposed to date him for a few months, get access to his finances, steal what I could, and disappear, but then I actually started to care about him. Not enough to stop stealing from him. No, not enough for that. I was in too deep with the network. I owed money to people who don't accept excuses. I had to keep going. So you married him, had his baby, all while planning to rob him and disappear. The baby wasn't planned, Vanessa said, and when I got pregnant, I thought maybe this was my chance to get out, to start over for real. But they wouldn't let me. They said I had to finish the job. They who? The people running the operation, the ones I'm going to testify about. They threatened me, said if I didn't complete the fraud and deliver the money I owed them, they'd hurt Marcus and the baby. So instead you were going to kidnap Connor and run to Mexico. I was trying to protect him, Vanessa said, tears in her eyes. If I stayed, they would have hurt all of us. If I ran alone, they would have used Marcus and Connor to get to me. Taking Connor and disappearing was the only way to keep him safe. By making Marcus think his son was gone forever, by destroying him emotionally and financially, that was protecting Connor. I know how it sounds, but I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. You could have told the truth. You could have gone to the police. You could have asked for help. They would have killed me. You don't understand what these people are capable of. Then help the police stop them. Give them everything. Names, evidence, locations. Make sure they can't hurt anyone else. I'm going to, Vanessa said. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness and I'm not asking for it, but I want you to know that I do care about Marcus and Connor. In my own broken way, I love them, and I'm going to make sure the people who forced me into this pay for it. Your love almost destroyed them, Vanessa. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that, but right now the best thing I can do is bring down the network and keep other families safe from what happened to yours. When Marcus brings Connor to visit, because he wants Connor to know his mother eventually, I want you to tell him the truth about everything. I don't want my son growing up with lies. Vanessa nodded. I will, I promise. And Carol, I'm sorry. I know those words don't mean much coming from me, but I truly am sorry for the pain I've caused. Save your apologies for Marcus, I said, standing up. He's the one who deserves them. The next day, Marcus brought Connor to the jail for Vanessa to see her son and apologize. I didn't go with them. That was something they needed to do privately, but when Marcus came back to the apartment afterwards, he looked lighter somehow, like a burden had been lifted. She told me everything, he said, about the network, the threats, why she did what she did, and Mom, I think I finally have closure. Good, that's important for healing. She also said she wants to make sure Connor knows the truth when he's old enough. She doesn't want him to grow up thinking she abandoned him. What do you think about that? I think Connor deserves to know his mother, even if his mother made terrible choices. When he's old enough, we'll tell him the truth and let him decide what kind of relationship he wants with her. That's very mature of you, Marcus. I don't feel mature. I feel exhausted and sad. But I also feel like maybe we can move forward now. We can, I said, and we will. Over the following months, Vanessa provided extensive testimony about the criminal network she'd been part of. Her information led to the arrest of 9 people across 4 states, including the man who'd recruited and trained her, who turned out to be running similar operations in 5 different cities simultaneously. The fraud network had victimized over 40 families and stolen more than $2 million over 3 years. Vanessa's cooperation helped shut down the entire operation and recover some of the stolen money. As promised, the prosecutor recommended a 15-year sentence with possibility of parole after 10 years, which the judge accepted. The day of Vanessa's sentencing, I sat in the courtroom with Marcus and Connor, watching as the judge delivered the sentence and Vanessa was led away in handcuffs. It should have felt like victory, like justice, but instead it just felt sad. Sad that Connor's mother would be in prison for the first decade of his life. Sad that Marcus had lost years to a relationship built on lies. Sad that this was how our family story had unfolded. But there was also relief. Relief that the fraud had been stopped, that the network had been dismantled, that other families would be spared what we'd been through. And relief that finally, after months of chaos and pain, we could begin to truly heal and move forward. As we left the courthouse that day, Connor asleep in Marcus's arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope for the future. Hope that Marcus would rebuild his life. Hope that Connor would grow up surrounded by love and truth. Hope that our family, though fractured and changed, would ultimately be okay. 3 months after Vanessa's sentencing, just when I thought the worst was behind us, I received a certified letter from an attorney's office I didn't recognize. The return address was in Seattle, and something about the thick envelope made my stomach clench with anxiety. I opened it sitting at my kitchen table in Scottsdale, the Arizona sun streaming through the windows, and read the first paragraph 3 times before it truly registered. Dear Mrs. Martinez, I am writing to inform you that you are named as a defendant in a civil lawsuit filed by my client, Margaret Thornton, seeking damages in the amount of $500,000 for defamation, emotional distress, and interference with familial relationships. Margaret Thornton, Vanessa's mother, or at least the woman Vanessa had claimed was her mother. I kept reading, my hands shaking. The lawsuit alleged that I had maliciously pursued criminal charges against Vanessa knowing she was innocent, that I had deliberately destroyed Vanessa's relationship with Marcus out of jealousy and spite, and that my actions had resulted in Margaret Thornton losing access to her grandson Connor. It was so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality that I almost laughed. Except there was nothing funny about being sued for $500,000. I immediately called my attorney, Richard Barnes, who'd helped Marcus with the debt fraud issues. Richard, I just received a lawsuit from Vanessa's mother claiming I defamed her daughter and owe her $500,000. Let me guess, Richard said with a sigh. Margaret Thornton is representing herself as the grieving mother of a wrongly convicted daughter. How did you know? Because this is a common tactic in fraud cases. Family members of convicted criminals sometimes file nuisance lawsuits hoping the victims will settle just to make it go away. They're counting on you being tired of legal battles and willing to pay to avoid more stress. I'm not paying a cent, I said firmly. Vanessa pleaded guilty. She's in prison because of her own crimes, not because I defamed her. I know that, and you know that. But we still have to respond to the lawsuit. I'll need you to send me all the documentation you have from Vanessa's case, and we'll file a motion to dismiss based on the facts. How long will this take? Could be a few months, could be longer if Margaret Thornton is determined to push it. But Carol, I want you to prepare yourself for something. What? This might not be just about money. This could be about getting access to Connor. I felt cold fear wash over me. What do you mean, access to Connor? If Margaret Thornton is really Vanessa's mother, she could argue for grandparents' rights, claim that she deserves visitation with Connor. Despite her daughter's incarceration, This lawsuit might be laying groundwork for a custody case. Can she do that? In Oregon, grandparents can petition for visitation rights under certain circumstances, especially if they can prove they have an established relationship with the child. But given that Connor is only a few months old and has never met Margaret Thornton, it would be an uphill battle for her. I need to tell Marcus. He needs to know about this. Agreed. And Carol, don't communicate directly with Margaret Thornton or her attorney. Let me handle all of that. I hung up and immediately called Marcus, who was back in Portland trying to rebuild his life and care for Connor as a single father. Mom, what's wrong? You sound upset. I just got sued by Vanessa's mother for $500,000. There was a long silence. Then Marcus said, Vanessa's mother? I didn't even know her mother was involved in her life. Vanessa always said they were estranged. That's what she told me too. But apparently Margaret Thornton exists and claims I destroyed her family. This is insane, Marcus said. You didn't do anything wrong. You reported crimes that actually happened. I know, but my attorney thinks this might be more than just a money grab. He thinks Margaret might be trying to establish grounds for seeking visitation with Connor. Over my dead body, Marcus said, his voice hard. Connor is not having contact with anyone from Vanessa's family. Not after everything they put us through. We'll fight this, I assured him. Richard is filing a motion to dismiss. But Marcus, I need to ask you something. Did you ever meet anyone claiming to be Vanessa's mother? Never. Vanessa said her parents wanted nothing to do with her, and that they disowned her years ago. I always thought it was strange, but she got so upset whenever I asked about them that I stopped bringing it up. That was probably part of her manipulation, keeping you from asking questions by getting emotional. It worked, Marcus said bitterly. God, I was so naive. You were trusting. That's not the same as naive. Feels the same from where I'm sitting, so what do we do now? We wait for Richard to handle the legal response, and we document everything about Connor's care and your fitness as a parent. If Margaret does try for grandparents' rights, we need to show that Connor is thriving with you and doesn't need intervention from people he's never met. I can do that, Marcus said. I've been keeping records anyway for the fraud case, medical appointments, expenses, everything. Good. Keep doing that, and Marcus, don't talk to anyone claiming to be from Vanessa's family. Refer them to Richard. Will do, and Mom, thank you for dealing with this. I know you've already been through so much because of Vanessa. We're family, I said. We protect each other. That's what we do. 2 weeks later, Richard called with an update. Carol, I've reviewed the lawsuit in detail and I have good news and bad news. Give me the bad news first. The bad news is that Margaret Thornton has hired a surprisingly competent attorney. This isn't going away as quickly as I'd hoped. They're alleging some specific claims that will require discovery and possibly depositions. And the good news? The good news is that their case is fundamentally weak. Vanessa pleaded guilty to the crimes. There's documented evidence of everything she did. Margaret's claims of defamation are baseless, but we still have to go through the process of proving that. How much is this going to cost me? I'll do my best to keep costs down, but you're probably looking at $10,000 to $15,000 in legal fees if this goes to trial. I'll pay whatever it takes. Vanessa is not going to win even from prison. There's something else, Richard said. Something strange that came up during my preliminary research into Margaret Thornton. What is it? I can't find any evidence that Margaret Thornton is actually Vanessa's mother. There's no birth certificate listing Margaret as Vanessa's parent, no adoption records, no legal documentation connecting them at all. So who is she? That's what I'm trying to figure out. My working theory is that Margaret Thornton is another member of the fraud network Vanessa was part of, possibly the person who recruited or trained her. If that's true, this lawsuit makes a lot more sense. It's not about a mother defending her daughter. It's about the criminal network trying to retaliate against you for helping dismantle their operation. I felt a chill run down my spine. Richard, if these people are that organized and that vindictive, could they be dangerous? Potentially. I'm going to recommend you take some security precautions, maybe install cameras at your house, be aware of your surroundings. Don't meet with anyone connected to this case without me present. You're scaring me. I don't mean to scare you, but I want you to be safe. These fraud networks can be sophisticated and they don't like people who interfere with their business. I'll be careful, I promised. Just keep me updated on the case. Over the next month, the lawsuit consumed more of my time and energy than I wanted to give it. Depositions were scheduled, document requests were filed, and I had to relive every detail of Vanessa's fraud for Margaret Thornton's attorney. The attorney, a sharp woman named Lisa Wu, asked pointed questions designed to make me look vindictive and obsessed. Mrs. Martinez, isn't it true that you were jealous of your son's relationship with Vanessa? No, that's completely false. But you did express concerns about their relationship before they were married, didn't you? I expressed normal parental concern about Marcus marrying someone he'd only known for 6 months. That's not jealousy, that's prudence. And when Vanessa became pregnant, didn't you try to convince Marcus to leave her? Absolutely not. I was excited about becoming a grandmother. Yet you drove to Portland uninvited for the birth. I was invited. Vanessa specifically called and asked me to come. Do you have proof of that invitation? I have phone records showing calls from Vanessa's number to mine in the days before Connor's birth. But no recording of the actual conversation where she invited you. No, I don't record my phone calls, but I have text messages that reference the invitation. Text messages you could have fabricated after the fact. I did not fabricate anything, I said, my voice rising. Vanessa committed fraud. She pleaded guilty. These are established facts. Facts, or your interpretation of events? Ms. Wu, I said carefully, your client's daughter is in prison because she stole from multiple people, including me. She forged documents. She committed identity theft. She was planning to kidnap my grandson and flee the country. These are not interpretations. These are convictions. The deposition continued in that vein for 3 hours, with Lisa Wu trying to twist every fact into evidence of my supposed vendetta against Vanessa. By the time it was over, I was exhausted and angry. Richard drove me back to my hotel. I'd flown to Seattle for the deposition and tried to reassure me. You did well in there, Carol. You stayed calm and stuck to the facts. I don't feel like I did well. I feel like she made me look like a monster. She tried to, but the truth is on your side. No jury is going to believe you fabricated evidence that resulted in a guilty plea and prison sentence. When is this going to be over, Richard? We have a hearing on our motion to dismiss in 3 weeks. If the judge grants it, the whole lawsuit goes away. If not, we're looking at a trial probably 6 months out. 6 more months of this. I don't know if I can handle it. You can, Richard said kindly. You're one of the strongest people I know. You've already survived the worst of Vanessa's fraud. You can survive this too. That evening in my hotel room, I called Marcus to check in. How's Connor? He's good, just went down for a nap. How was the deposition? Brutal. Vanessa's mother's attorney tried to paint me as a jealous grandmother who made up fraud allegations. That's ridiculous. There's documented evidence of everything Vanessa did. I know, but they're trying to create enough doubt to either force a settlement or win at trial. We're not settling, Marcus said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong. I appreciate that, sweetheart. How are you holding up? Honestly, Mom, I'm struggling. Being a single parent is harder than I expected. Connor barely sleeps, I'm behind on work, and I'm terrified that somehow Vanessa's family is going to try to take him from me. They're not going to take Connor. I promise you that. How can you promise that when we don't even know who these people really are or what they're capable of? Because we have the truth on our side, and because I will spend every dollar I have fighting to protect you and Connor. I said, you are not alone in this, Marcus. I know, and I'm grateful. I just wish it was over. I wish Vanessa had never existed and Connor had a normal family. Connor has a normal family. He has a father who loves him and a grandmother who adores him. That's more than a lot of kids have. You're right. I'm just tired. Get some sleep while Connor's napping, and Marcus, call me if you need anything, day or night. Thanks, Mom. I love you. I love you too. 3 weeks later, I flew back to Seattle for the hearing on Richard's motion to dismiss. We met at the courthouse early, going over our arguments one final time. The judge in this case is Marilyn Foster, Richard explained. She's fair but thorough. She's going to want to see clear evidence that the lawsuit is frivolous before she dismisses it. Do we have that evidence? We have Vanessa's guilty plea, the criminal case documentation, and the fact that Margaret Thornton has no legal standing as she's not actually Vanessa's mother. Yes, I think we have enough. The courtroom was small and nearly empty when we entered, just us, Lisa Wu, and a woman I assumed was Margaret Thornton, sitting at the plaintiff's table. Margaret was in her 50s, well-dressed, with dark hair and cold eyes that assessed me as I walked in. There was something calculating in her expression that reminded me uncomfortably of Vanessa. "All rise," the bailiff called as Judge Foster entered. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s with gray hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. "Please be seated. We're here on a motion to dismiss filed by the defendant, Carol Martinez. Mr. Barnes, you may present your arguments." Richard stood and walked to the podium, carrying a thick file of documents. "Your Honor, this lawsuit is a transparent attempt to retaliate against Mrs. Martinez for reporting legitimate crimes committed by the plaintiff's alleged daughter. Vanessa Thornton pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. She is currently serving a 15-year prison sentence. The claims in this lawsuit that Mrs. Martinez somehow fabricated these charges are contradicted by Ms. Thornton's own guilty plea and the extensive evidence presented at her criminal trial." Judge Foster looked over her glasses at Lisa Wu. "Ms. Wu, how do you respond to that?" "Your Honor, my client is not disputing that her daughter pleaded guilty. However, we contend that Vanessa Thornton was coerced into that plea by the relentless and malicious prosecution pursued by Mrs. Martinez. Our evidence shows a pattern of harassment and manipulation by Mrs. Martinez designed to destroy her daughter-in-law's reputation and relationship with her son." "That's absurd," I whispered to Richard, who put a hand on my arm to quiet me. "Your Honor," Richard continued, "Ms. Wu's argument fails on multiple grounds. First, Mrs. Martinez did not prosecute anyone. The state of Oregon prosecuted Vanessa Thornton based on evidence gathered by law enforcement. Second, there is no evidence of coercion in the guilty plea. Ms. Thornton was represented by competent counsel and made the decision to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. Third, and perhaps most importantly, we have evidence that Margaret Thornton is not actually Vanessa Thornton's mother, and therefore has no standing to bring this lawsuit." Judge Foster leaned forward with interest. "Mr. Barnes, can you elaborate on that last point?" "Certainly, Your Honor. We have obtained birth records for Vanessa Thornton, showing that her mother of record is a woman named Patricia Cooper, not Margaret Thornton. We have found no adoption records, no legal guardianship documents, no evidence of any kind that Margaret Thornton has any legal relationship to Vanessa Thornton. Our investigation suggests that Margaret Thornton is actually another member of the criminal fraud network that Vanessa Thornton was part of, and this lawsuit is an attempt by that network to retaliate against Mrs. Martinez for helping law enforcement dismantle their operation." "Is this true, Ms. Wu?" Judge Foster asked, turning to the plaintiff's attorney. "Your Honor, my client maintains that she is Vanessa Thornton's adoptive mother. The adoption was informal and not legally documented, but the relationship is genuine. An informal, undocumented adoption is not recognized under Washington law," Richard countered. "Ms. Thornton has no legal standing to sue for damages related to Vanessa Thornton's incarceration." "I'd like to hear from Miss Thornton directly," Judge Foster said. "Miss Thornton, please approach the bench." Margaret stood and walked to the podium, her movements graceful and controlled. Nothing about her demeanor suggested grief or maternal concern. Instead, she looked like someone playing a role. "Miss Thornton," Judge Foster said, "can you provide any documentation of your relationship to Vanessa Thornton?" "I raised Vanessa from age 12, Margaret said, her voice smooth after her biological mother abandoned her. "I took her in and cared for her as my own daughter." "Do you have any documentation of this? School records, medical records, anything showing you acted as her guardian?" "The relationship was informal," Margaret repeated. "We didn't feel the need for legal paperwork." "That's convenient," Judge Foster said dryly. "Ms. Thornton, I've reviewed the evidence in this case and I have serious concerns about your standing to bring this lawsuit. More concerning is the evidence suggesting you may be part of a criminal enterprise. I'm going to ask you directly. What is your actual relationship to Vanessa Thornton? And why are you really filing this lawsuit?" Margaret's composed expression finally cracked, showing a flash of anger. "I'm trying to protect my family from a vindictive woman who destroyed my daughter's life." "Your daughter destroyed her own life by committing multiple felonies," Judge Foster said. "And Ms. Thornton, I'm going to warn you that if I find you filed this lawsuit in bad faith as part of a criminal conspiracy, I will refer this matter to law enforcement. Now I'll ask you one more time. Do you have any legitimate legal relationship to Vanessa Thornton?" Margaret stared at the judge for a long moment, then said quietly, "No, I don't have legal documentation." "Then you have no standing to bring this lawsuit," Judge Foster said, motion to dismiss is granted. Furthermore, I'm sanctioning the plaintiff and her attorney for filing a frivolous lawsuit, Ms. Wu. You should have verified your client's standing before filing. The plaintiff will pay the defendant's legal fees and costs. And Ms. Thornton, I'm referring this matter to the Seattle Police Department for investigation into possible fraud and conspiracy. Bailiff, escort Miss Thornton to the courthouse security office, where she'll be held pending police arrival. The bailiff moved toward Margaret, who suddenly bolted for the courtroom door. She was fast, but the bailiff was faster, catching her arm as she reached for the handle. "Let me go," Margaret shouted, struggling against his grip. "You don't understand. They'll kill me if I don't finish this." "Who will kill you?" Judge Foster demanded. "Ms. Thornton, who are you working for?" Margaret went limp in the bailiff's grip, her face pale. "The network," she said quietly. "The people who run the romance scams. They sent me here to either get money from Carol Martinez or get access to the kid. They said if I failed, they'd—" She stopped, shaking her head. "They'd—" "What, Miss Thornton?" "Kill me, just like they killed the last person who failed them." The courtroom was silent. Even Lisa Wu looked shocked. "Your Honor," Richard said carefully, "I think we need law enforcement here immediately. This sounds like witness testimony about organized crime." "Agreed," Judge Foster said. "Bailiff, call the police and keep Ms. Thornton in custody. This hearing is adjourned." As the bailiff led Margaret out of the courtroom, still handcuffed and now crying, I felt Richard's hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay, Carol?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I thought this was just about a frivolous lawsuit. I didn't realize there was a whole criminal organization still targeting my family." "We're going to make sure you and Marcus are protected," Richard promised. 2 hours later, I sat in a conference room at the Seattle Police Department being interviewed by a detective named James Morrison who specialized in organized crime. "Mrs. Martinez," Detective Morrison said, "I need you to tell me everything you know about the fraud network that targeted your family." I told him everything, starting with Vanessa's initial crimes against me, through her arrest and guilty plea, to Margaret Thornton's lawsuit and the revelations in court that morning. When I finished, Detective Morrison sat back in his chair looking grim. "Mrs. Martinez, what you've described matches a pattern we've been investigating for almost 2 years. We believe there's a sophisticated criminal organization operating across the western states that specializes in romance scams, identity theft, and family fraud. They recruit vulnerable people, train them in fraud techniques, and send them out to target specific victims, usually older women with money or families with resources." "Vanessa was one of their recruits?" "Yes, and based on Margaret Thornton's statements this morning, she's another one, probably higher up in the organization, given that she was sent to handle the retaliation against you." "Retaliation for what?" "Helping put Vanessa in prison." "Partially, but also for providing information that led to the arrest of 9 network members. You cost them millions of dollars in potential revenue and exposed their operation. They want revenge, and they want to discourage other victims from cooperating with law enforcement." I felt cold fear settle in my stomach. "Detective, am I in danger?" "Potentially, yes. I'm going to recommend you take serious security precautions. We can provide you with information about protective measures, and we'll be monitoring Margaret Thornton's communications to see if we can identify other network members." "What about my son and grandson? Are they in danger too?" "I'll coordinate with Portland police to ensure they're protected as well," Detective Morrison said. "But Mrs. Martinez, I need you to understand something. These people are professionals. They're patient and they're dangerous. You need to be vigilant and report anything suspicious immediately." "I will," I promised. "What happens to Margaret Thornton now?" "She's being held on fraud charges related to the lawsuit, but we're hoping she'll cooperate and provide information about the network's leadership. If she does, she might get a reduced sentence. If not, she's looking at significant prison time." "Will you let me know what happens?" "I'll keep you updated as much as I can," Detective Morrison said. "In the meantime, here's my direct number. Call me if anything unusual happens, anything at all." I took his card and thanked him. Then Richard drove me back to my hotel, where I immediately called Marcus. "Sweetheart, there's been a development in the lawsuit. It's been dismissed. But there's something you need to know." "What's wrong, Mom? You sound scared." "The lawsuit was filed by someone from the criminal network Vanessa was part of. They're targeting our family for retaliation. The Seattle police think we might be in danger." "Oh God," Marcus breathed. "What do we do?" "The police are setting up protection and monitoring. But Marcus, I need you to be extra careful. Install security cameras. Don't open your door to anyone you don't know. Keep Connor close. I'm scared, Mom. What if they try to hurt Connor? They won't get to Connor, I said firmly. Even though I was terrified, we're going to do everything necessary to keep him safe. I'm going to call a security company right now and have a system installed at your apartment. What about you? Are you safe in Arizona? I'm installing security too, and I'm considering staying in Portland for a while so I can be close to you and Connor. You don't have to do that, Mom. Yes, I do. You're my family, and I'm not leaving you to deal with this alone. I'll fly home tomorrow, pack up some things, and come back to Portland for an extended stay. Okay, Marcus said, his voice small. Thank you. Mom. That evening, lying in my Seattle hotel room, unable to sleep, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed in less than a year. I'd gone from excited grandmother to be to victim of fraud to witness in a criminal case to target of an organized crime network. It was surreal and terrifying and exhausting. But through it all, the one constant was my love for Marcus and Connor, my determination to protect them no matter what it cost me. I'd already lost so much time with my grandson, my peaceful retirement, my sense of safety. But I wasn't going to lose my family to criminals who saw us as nothing more than revenue streams and obstacles. The next morning, Richard met me for breakfast before my flight back to Arizona. The good news is that with the lawsuit dismissed and Margaret Thornton in custody, you don't have to worry about civil litigation anymore. And the bad news? The bad news is that you're now officially a target of a criminal organization that has resources and motivation to harm you. Carol, I'm not exaggerating when I say you need to take this seriously. I am taking it seriously. I'm hiring security. I'm being vigilant. What else can I do? Consider relocating temporarily. Maybe stay with friends or family in a place where the network wouldn't think to look for you. I can't hide Richard. I have a grandson who needs me and a son who's struggling. Then at minimum, vary your routine. Don't go to the same places at the same times. Tell someone where you are at all times. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I'll be careful, I promised. The flight back to Arizona gave me time to think about everything that had happened and everything that was still unfolding. When I landed in Phoenix and drove back to my house in Scottsdale, I noticed things I'd never paid attention to before. Cars that seemed to be following me, people who looked at me too long, the shadows in my driveway. I'd never been a paranoid person, but now paranoia felt like survival. I spent the next 3 days packing, installing security cameras and alarms, and researching extended stay hotels in Portland. I also called Detective Morrison for an update. Detective, this is Carol Martinez. Do you have any news about Margaret Thornton? We do actually. She's agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's providing names and evidence about the network's operations. That's good news, right? Very good news. We're anticipating multiple arrests in the next few weeks. Mrs. Martinez, Margaret also provided some information specifically about you. What kind of information? She said the network had planned a more aggressive retaliation if the lawsuit didn't work. They were considering attempting to kidnap Connor and demand ransom from you and your son. My blood ran cold. They were going to kidnap my grandson? That was the plan, yes, but with Margaret in custody and talking, we've been able to identify the people who were supposed to execute the kidnapping, and we have them under surveillance. They won't be able to get near your family. Are you sure, Detective? I'm as sure as I can be. We're making arrests this week. The immediate threat should be neutralized soon. Please let me know when the arrests happen. I need to know my family is safe. I will, Detective Morrison promised. That evening, I called Marcus with the update. They were planning to kidnap Connor? Marcus's voice was shaking with rage and fear. They were, but the police have it under control. Arrests are happening this week. This is insane, Mom. How did our lives become a crime thriller? Because Vanessa was more than just a small-time con artist, I said. She was part of something much bigger and more dangerous. But Marcus, the important thing is that it's almost over. Once these arrests happen, we should be safe. Should be or will be. Should be, I said honestly. I can't promise absolute safety, but the police are doing everything they can. When can you come to Portland? I'm packing now. I'll be there in 3 days. I'm going to stay for a while, help you with Connor, and make sure you're both okay. Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out, I said. I'm your mother. I'll always be here for you. 3 days later, I loaded my car with enough belongings for several months and drove from Arizona to Oregon. A 14-hour trip that gave me plenty of time to think. I thought about how this had all started with a simple phone call from Vanessa asking me to come to Portland for Connor's birth. How that invitation had been a calculated move in a complex fraud scheme. How I'd almost lost everything to people who saw my love for my family as a weakness to exploit. But I also thought about resilience, about how Marcus had survived the revelation of Vanessa's betrayal and stepped up as a single father, about how I'd fought back against fraud and manipulation and won, about how our family, though battered and changed, was still standing. When I finally pulled up to Marcus's apartment building in Portland late that evening, he was waiting outside with Connor in his arms. I got out of the car and hugged them both, my son and my grandson, the two most important people in my world. "Welcome home, Mom," Marcus said. And even though it wasn't technically my home, it felt like it because home wasn't a place. It was wherever my family needed me to be. Over the next week, we settled into a new routine. I helped with Connor during the day so Marcus could work. We had quiet dinners together talking about everything and nothing, slowly healing from the trauma of the past months. Detective Morrison called on Thursday evening with news I'd been waiting for. "Mrs. Martinez, we've made 7 arrests in the past 48 hours, including the 2 individuals who were assigned to target your grandson. The network's leadership is in custody and facing federal charges." "It's really over?" "It's really over. You and your family are safe now." I hung up and went to find Marcus, who was giving Connor a bath in the kitchen sink, the baby splashing happily while his father smiled. "It's over," I said. "The police arrested everyone. We're safe." Marcus looked up at me, tears in his eyes. "Really?" "Really," I confirmed. He picked up Connor, wrapping him in a towel, and the 3 of us stood in that tiny Portland apartment kitchen, holding each other and crying for everything we'd lost and everything we'd survived and everything we still had. We were going to be okay, damaged but intact, changed but unbroken, and together, we were going to build a new life. One based on truth and love and the hard-won knowledge that family isn't just about blood. It's about choosing each other over and over, even when that choice is difficult, even when it costs everything. 6 months after the arrests, life had settled into something resembling normalcy, though I'd learned that normal was a relative term. I'd moved into a small apartment near Marcus in Portland, close enough to help with Connor, but far enough to give my son his independence. Connor was now 10 months old, crawling everywhere and pulling himself up on furniture, his personality emerging more each day. He had Marcus's gentle nature, but also a stubborn streak that I like to think came from me, the determination to keep going even when things got difficult. Marcus had started therapy to process the trauma of Vanessa's betrayal, and I could see him slowly healing, becoming more confident as a father, and more open to the possibility of eventually trusting someone again. We didn't talk about Vanessa much anymore. There wasn't much left to say. She was serving her sentence, and we were moving forward with our lives. Then one Tuesday morning in October, I received a call from Detective Morrison that I hadn't been expecting. "Mrs. Martinez, there's been a development in the case that you need to know about." "What kind of development?" I asked, my stomach clenching with familiar anxiety. "Vanessa Thornton has requested to speak with you. She says she has information about the fraud network that she didn't disclose during her initial cooperation. Information she'll only share if you agree to visit her." "Why does she want to talk to me specifically? Can't she tell the prosecutors?" "She's insisting on speaking with you first, says it's personal information that affects your family directly." Detective Morrison paused. "Mrs. Martinez, I need to be clear. You're under no obligation to do this. Vanessa has no leverage here, and we can pursue the information through other channels if necessary." "But you think I should talk to her?" I said, reading between the lines. "I think she might have information that could give you closure or answer questions you still have, but only if you're emotionally prepared for whatever she might tell you." I thought about it for a moment, weighing my desire to be completely done with Vanessa against my need to protect my family from any remaining threats. If there's information that could affect Marcus or Connor, I need to know it. "When can I see her?" "I'll arrange it for this week if you're available. You'll meet in a private room at the prison with security present and Mrs. Martinez. Remember that Vanessa is a master manipulator. Don't believe anything she says without verification." "I understand," I said. 2 days later, I drove to the Women's Correctional Facility 2 hours outside of Portland where Vanessa was serving her sentence. The prison was a grim concrete building surrounded by chain link fences and razor wire, a stark reminder of the consequences of Vanessa's choices. I went through security screening, surrendering my phone and purse, then was escorted by a guard down the long corridor to a small meeting room with a table and two chairs. Vanessa was already there, sitting with her hands folded on the table, wearing an orange jumpsuit that seemed to swallow her small frame. She looked different than the last time I'd seen her. Thinner, paler, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail without makeup or the carefully constructed appearance she'd maintained before. When she saw me, something in her expression shifted. Not quite remorse, but something close to it. Carol, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. The detective said you have information about my family. That's the only reason I'm here. I know, Vanessa said quietly, and I appreciate your honesty. You've never pretended with me, even when I deserved it. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to tell you the truth, the whole truth this time, about why I targeted your family and what the network's real plan was. I thought you already told the truth during your cooperation agreement. I told part of the truth, the parts that wouldn't. Vanessa paused, the parts that wouldn't destroy what little I had left. Which was what exactly? The hope that someday Connor might want to know me, that Marcus might understand why I did what I did. But I realize now that holding back information is just another form of lying, and I'm done lying, especially to you. I sat down across from her, keeping my expression neutral. I'm listening. Vanessa took a deep breath. When I met Marcus, it wasn't random. I was given a file on your family 6 months before our first encounter. The file had everything: your financial information, Marcus's employment history, your late husband's life insurance payout, your retirement accounts, even photos of your house in Arizona. A file? Who compiled this file? The network's research team. They identify targets based on specific criteria: older women with significant assets, adult children who are trusting and financially stable, family dynamics that can be exploited. Your family checked every box. I felt sick but kept my voice steady, so you researched us like we were marks in a con game. Yes, Vanessa said simply. I studied you for months before I ever approached Marcus. I knew his favorite coffee shop, his work schedule, his hobbies. I engineered our meeting to seem coincidental, but it was completely planned. Why are you telling me this now? Because there's more, and you need to know it to protect Connor. My heart started racing. What about Connor? Connor wasn't supposed to exist, Vanessa said, her voice cracking slightly. The plan was to date Marcus for 4 to 6 months, marry him quickly, gain access to family finances, steal as much as possible, and disappear. Pregnancy wasn't part of the plan. When I found out I was pregnant, I went to my handler and told them I wanted out, that I couldn't do this to a child. And they said no. I guessed. They said the pregnancy was perfect, that a baby would give me legal rights to Marcus's assets and create a connection to you that could be exploited for years. They wanted me to have Connor, use him to manipulate the family, and when I'd extracted maximum value they wanted me to. She stopped, her hands shaking. To what, Vanessa? To leave Connor somewhere and stage my own death so Marcus would believe we were both gone. They had a plan to make it look like a car accident. Bodies too burned to identify. Then I was supposed to disappear to South America while they collected life insurance money. I felt rage building in my chest. You were going to make Marcus think his son was dead? I refused, Vanessa said quickly. That's when I started planning to actually run with Connor. The fake passport and plane tickets to Mexico weren't part of the network's plan. That was me trying to protect my son from them. By kidnapping him and making Marcus think he'd lost you both anyway. It was the only way I could think of to keep Connor safe. If I stayed, they would have forced me to complete the original plan. If I ran alone, they would have used Connor to get to me. Taking him with me was the only option I could see. You could have gone to the police. You could have told Marcus the truth. I was terrified. They'd shown me what happens to people who betray the network. I knew a woman who tried to leave. They found her. And Vanessa's voice dropped to a whisper. They made an example of her. I couldn't risk that happening with Connor in the picture. I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything she'd told me. Vanessa, why are you telling me this now? What's changed? I'm telling you, because the network isn't finished with your family. Margaret Thornton was just the first retaliation. There are others who haven't been arrested yet. And she hesitated, they've put a price on information about Connor's location and routine. A price? You mean like a bounty? Yes, they want to know where Connor is, who's caring for him, what his schedule is. They're offering $20,000 to anyone who can provide detailed surveillance information. Oh my God, why Connor? Why target a baby? Because you cost them millions of dollars and expose their operation. Hurting you through Connor is their revenge. And Carol, you need to understand something. These people are patient. They'll wait months or years for the right opportunity. You can't let your guard down. I need to tell Detective Morrison about this immediately. I already told him. That's why he arranged this meeting, but I wanted to tell you myself. Wanted you to hear it from me so you'd know I'm not trying to manipulate you this time. I'm trying to protect my son the only way I can from prison. Why should I believe anything you say? You've lied about everything else. Because I have nothing to gain from lying anymore, Vanessa said, meeting my eyes. I'm already in prison. I've already lost Marcus and Connor. The only thing I can do now is try to keep Connor safe from the people who wanted me to destroy him. We sat in silence for a moment, then I asked the question I'd been holding back. Did you ever actually love Marcus? Or was it all an act? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. It started as an act, but somewhere along the way it became real. I fell in love with him, with the life we were building. I wanted out of the network, but I didn't know how to escape. And by the time Connor was born, I was in too deep to see any way out except running. That doesn't excuse what you did. I know nothing excuses it. I made terrible choices and Marcus and Connor are paying the price. But Carol, I need you to believe this one thing. I love my son. I never wanted him to be part of this world. And if keeping him safe means spending the rest of my life in prison, I'll do that gladly. I stood up, ready to leave. Is there anything else I need to know? Yes, Vanessa said. One more thing. The file the network compiled on your family. It included information about your late husband's death. I froze. What kind of information? They knew he died of a heart attack when Marcus was 7. They knew you raised Marcus alone, and they specifically instructed me to use that. To position myself as the family Marcus had been missing, to fill the void your husband's death had created. I felt tears burning in my eyes. You used my husband's death to manipulate my son? I did, and I'm sorrier for that than I can ever express. Your family didn't deserve any of this. You loved Marcus and welcomed me in, and I repaid that kindness with lies and theft and pain. I don't expect forgiveness because I don't deserve it, but I needed you to know the full truth. I walked to the door, then turned back. Vanessa, does Marcus know all of this? Not yet. I thought you should hear it first. Should decide how much to tell him. Tell him everything, I said firmly. He deserves to know the truth. All of it. No more secrets. No more protection from painful realities. And Vanessa, if you really love Connor, you'll sign away your parental rights and let Marcus raise him without the shadow of this hanging over him. I can't do that, she said, her voice breaking. He's my son. He's the son you were planning to use as a pawn in a criminal scheme. The son you were going to make Marcus think was dead. You don't get to claim motherhood after that. Please, I just want him to know someday that I loved him. Then write him a letter. Put it away for when he's 18. But don't force Marcus to spend the next 17 years managing your parental rights and prison visits. Give Connor a chance at a normal life. Vanessa was openly crying now. You're right, you're absolutely right. I'll have my attorney draw up the paperwork. But Carol, will you make sure Connor knows I loved him, that everything I did wrong was because I was weak and scared, not because I didn't love him? I'll make sure he knows the truth, I said, which includes the fact that you loved him, but made terrible choices. What he does with that information when he's old enough to understand will be up to him. Thank you, Vanessa whispered. I left the prison feeling emotionally exhausted, but also strangely relieved. I finally had all the answers, understood the full scope of the con that had targeted my family, and while the truth was painful, it was also liberating. No more wondering, no more gaps in the story. Just the hard reality that we could now process and move past. That evening, I sat Marcus down after Connor was asleep and told him everything Vanessa had revealed. He listened in silence, his face going through a range of emotions: shock, anger, grief, and finally a kind of resigned acceptance. So our entire relationship was a lie from the very beginning. Marcus said when I finished, she researched me like I was a target, planned our meeting, manipulated me into falling in love with her. Yes, I said gently, but Marcus, somewhere in all that manipulation, her feelings became real. I believe that. I don't think it excuses what she did, but I think it's important to acknowledge that she did love you and Connor in her own broken way. Does that matter? If the foundation was built on lies? Does it matter that she eventually developed real feelings? I think it matters for Connor. Someday he's going to ask about his mother, and when that day comes, it'll be better to tell him that she was a complicated person who made terrible choices but did love him, rather than telling him she was incapable of love. Marcus nodded slowly, Vanessa's signing away her parental rights. Yes, her attorney should have the paperwork ready next week. Good, I can't. I can't have her in Connor's life, not after everything. I understand, and I think you're making the right choice for Connor's well-being. Mom, Marcus said, looking at me with exhausted eyes. When does this end? When do we get to just be a normal family? We're getting there, sweetheart. The arrests have been made. Vanessa's in prison. The threats are being managed. We're closer to normal than we've been in a year. I just want to raise my son without constantly looking over my shoulder, without wondering if someone from Vanessa's past is going to show up and try to hurt him. I know, and we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. Detective Morrison is keeping us updated on any potential threats, and we're taking every precaution possible. Over the next few months, life continued to improve incrementally. Vanessa signed away her parental rights, giving Marcus sole custody of Connor with no visitation requirements. The remaining members of the fraud network were arrested and charged, effectively dismantling the organization that had targeted vulnerable families for years. Detective Morrison called regularly with updates, and each call brought news of another arrest, another piece of the network destroyed. Marcus continued therapy and started cautiously dating again, meeting a woman named Sarah who worked at Connor's daycare and knew the whole complicated story of his past. I liked Sarah immediately. She was open and honest and patient with Marcus's trust issues, and she adored Connor, treating him like he was precious rather than complicated. One evening, about 8 months after my meeting with Vanessa, Marcus and I were having dinner while Connor played with blocks on the floor. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret any of it, reporting Vanessa, pursuing the charges, everything that happened after? I thought about the question carefully. Do I regret that Vanessa went to prison and Connor lost his mother? Yes, I wish there had been another way, but do I regret protecting our family from fraud and manipulation? No, I don't regret that. Sometimes there are no good choices, only less bad ones. That's what my therapist says, that I shouldn't feel guilty for the consequences of Vanessa's choices. Your therapist is right. You didn't make Vanessa commit fraud. You didn't make her lie to you. Those were her choices, and she's facing the consequences of those choices. I just want Connor to grow up happy and secure without the weight of all this trauma. He will, I said confidently, because he has you, and you're an amazing father, Marcus. You've given him stability and love and safety. That's what he'll remember, not the complicated circumstances of his birth. You think so? I know so. Look at him. I gestured to Connor, who was happily stacking blocks and knocking them down, giggling each time they fell. He's thriving, Marcus. He's healthy and happy and loved. You did that. We did that, Marcus corrected. I couldn't have gotten through this without you, Mom. That's what family does. We show up for each other, especially in the hard times. The conversation was interrupted by Connor bringing me a block, his way of asking me to play with him. I got down on the floor and started building towers for him to knock down, marveling at how much joy this little boy had brought into my life despite the terrible circumstances of how he came into it. 2 years after Vanessa's arrest, I stood in Marcus's apartment, now a small house he'd been able to buy after settling the fraudulent debts and rebuilding his credit, watching Connor play in the backyard with Sarah's daughter Emma from her previous marriage. Connor was almost 3 now, talkative and energetic and completely unaware of the complicated story of his origins. Marcus came to stand beside me, his arm around Sarah, who was 7 months pregnant with their second child. Can you believe how much has changed, Mom? He asked. I can hardly believe it. 2 years ago, we were dealing with fraud investigations and criminal trials. Now look at you. New house, growing family, second chance at happiness. I owe so much of that to you. If you hadn't pushed back against Vanessa, if you just paid those fraudulent bills and stayed quiet like she expected, I'd probably still be married to her, drowning in debt and completely unaware of the danger my son was in. Or she would have completed her plan and you'd think both she and Connor were dead. Marcus shuddered. I try not to think about that, about how close we came to losing everything. But we didn't lose everything, I said firmly. We lost some things: innocence, trust, time we should have had together. But we kept what mattered most: family, safety, truth. Mom, Marcus said seriously, I never properly thanked you for everything you did, for fighting for us even when I was fighting against you, for refusing to give up even when it would have been easier to walk away. You're my son, Marcus. Walking away was never an option. No matter how hard things got, no matter how much you pushed me away, I was always going to fight for you and Connor. I know that now, and I want Connor to know it too. I want him to understand someday that his grandmother loved him so much that she took on criminals and con artists and court battles just to keep him safe. He'll know. We'll make sure he knows the whole story when he's old enough to understand. What will we tell him about Vanessa? We'll tell him the truth, I said, that his birth mother was a complicated person who made terrible choices but did love him, that she's in prison because of those choices, and that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome the damage we do to ourselves and others. That's a hard truth for a kid to learn. It is, but Connor will have us to help him process it, and he'll have Sarah and Emma and his new sibling. He'll have a family built on honesty and love. That's more than a lot of kids have. Sarah spoke up for the first time, squeezing Marcus's hand. I want Connor to know he can ask me anything about his mom. I won't pretend to replace Vanessa, but I'll be here for him however he needs me to be. You're going to be an amazing stepmother, I said, and I meant it. The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Marcus went to answer it and came back with Detective Morrison. Detective, this is a surprise, I said. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Mrs. Martinez, he said with a smile. I actually came with good news. We've recovered a significant portion of the money Vanessa and her network stole, about 40% of it, and it's being distributed back to the victims. That's wonderful. How much are we talking about? For your family specifically, about $18,000 between the fraudulent bills, credit card charges, and Marcus's identity theft debts. Marcus looked stunned. 18,000, that's amazing. That'll help so much with the new baby expenses. There's more, Detective Morrison continued. Margaret Thornton and several other network members had assets that were seized. Those assets are being liquidated and distributed to victims as well. You should see an additional settlement within the next 6 months. I never expected to see any of that money again, I admitted. Most victims don't, but this case was unusual in its scope and documentation. Your cooperation was instrumental in not only shutting down the network, but also in recovering assets without your willingness to pursue charges and testify. None of this would have been possible. Detective Morrison stayed for coffee and to play with Connor for a few minutes before leaving, shaking my hand at the door with genuine warmth. Mrs. Martinez, I've worked a lot of fraud cases over the years, but I have to say, your family's resilience is remarkable. What Vanessa did to you could have destroyed your relationships permanently, but instead you've come out stronger. We had to make a choice, I said. Let the fraud define us or move past it. We chose to move past it. Not everyone makes that choice, the detective said. A lot of families fall apart under this kind of pressure. The fact that you're all still standing, still together. That's something to be proud of. After he left, I sat in Marcus's backyard watching Connor play, thinking about how everything we'd been through, even trippy people, and everything we'd learned. I'd learned that trust is precious, but also that it can be rebuilt after betrayal. I'd learned that protecting the people you love sometimes means making decisions they won't understand or appreciate in the moment. I'd learned that criminals count on good people staying quiet to avoid conflict, and that speaking up is often the bravest thing you can do. Most importantly, I'd learned that family isn't just about blood or legal connections. It's about who shows up when things get easier to wait to me thanked. He wrote, "You'd ham but quitch." 3 years after Vanessa's arrest, I received a letter from her, forwarded through her attorney. The envelope had been opened and inspected by prison officials, but the letter inside was intact. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Dear Carl, the Wörtergmeter Degementem Ficken in Carbavs. and I wittigam tribidagor I'm rat, full judan pine trim. Raven com is a five and tomb, a fix coming to fit bed will I've have had a lot of time to think about the choices I made and the people I've akitert. I've been through intensive therapy and I've come to understand that what I did to your family wasn't just criminal, it was evil. I used your love for Marcus against you. I exploited your to Gambank Gudimerview. I turned your greatest strengths into weapons to hurt you. And I will never forgive myself for against you. I've quit to go. You made sure Connor knows I loved him a ton. The letter continued. I want you to know that my testimony and cooperation has led to over 30 arrests and the recovery of more than $4 million stolen from victims. It doesn't undo the harm I caused, but it's something. It's the only way I can contribute positively to the world from in here. I also want you to know that I think about Connor every day. I wonder what he looks like, whether he's happy, what kind of person he's becoming. I know I have no right to that information. I gave up my parental rights willingly because it was the right thing to do. But a mother's love just tastes unworthy of the title. I've heard through my attorney that Marcus is remarried and expecting another child. I'm genuinely happy for him. He deserves love and happiness after what I put him through. Please tell him that if you think it would help. Tell him I'm sorry and that I hope he's found peace. The letter concluded, Carol, I'm writing this 3 years into a 15-year sentence. I have 12 more years to think about my choices and their consequences, 12 more years to become a better person than I was. I don't know if redemption is possible for someone like me, but I'm trying, if only so that someday, if Connor ever wants to meet me, I'll be someone worth meeting. Thank you for protecting my son when I couldn't. Thank you for being the grandmother I prevented you from being at his birth. Thank you for fighting for your family even when it pretend to be. Strong mine, you are everything I pretended to be. Strong, honest, protective, duldig. I I set the letter down, surprised to find tears on my cheeks. I didn't forgive Vanessa. Forgiveness felt too big and too complicated for what she'd done. But I also didn't hate her anymore. Hate required energy and emotion I no longer wanted to spend on her. Instead, I felt something like pity mixed with hope. Pity for the person she'd been, hope for the person she might become. I showed the letter to Marcus that evening. He read it in silence, his expression unreadable. When he finished, he folded it carefully and handed it back to me. What do you think? I asked. I think she's trying, Marcus said slowly. Whether she'll succeed in becoming a better person? I don't know. But she's trying, and that's more than I expected from her. Do you want me to respond? No, Marcus said firmly. I don't want contact with her, but I'm glad she's trying to make amends, for her sake and for Connor's, if he ever does want to meet her. It'll be better if she's done the work to become someone worth knowing. That seems wise. Mom, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about, Marcus said. Changing the subject, Sarah and I have been discussing names for the baby. If it's a girl, we're naming her Carol after you. Marcus, I felt emotion welling up. You don't have to do that. We want to. You saved our family. You fought for us when no one else would. We want our daughter to carry your name and hopefully some of your strength and courage. I would be honored, I said, crying now, truly honored. 5 years after Vanessa's arrest, I sat in my living room in Portland, in a house I'd bought to be near my family permanently, surrounded by people I loved. Marcus and Sarah, and their 2 children, Connor, who was now 5 and starting kindergarten, and baby Carol, who was 2 and already showing signs of the stubborn determination her namesake was known for. Emma, Sarah's daughter from her previous marriage, who Connor adored like a sister, and even a few friends I'd made in Portland, people who knew the whole complicated story and had adored like a sister, and even a few friends I'd made in Portland, people who knew the whole complicated story and had chose to be part of our lives anyway. We were celebrating Connor's 5th birthday, and as I watched him blow out candles on his cake, making a wish with his eyes squeezed shut and his whole face scrunched in concentration, I thought about how far we'd come. 5 years ago, I'd been a grandmother prevented from meeting her grandson, a victim of fraud, a mother estranged from her son. Now I was an integral part of a growing family, trusted and loved and needed. Connor opened his presents with the enthusiasm only a 5-year-old can muster, tearing through wrapping paper and shouting with delight at each gift. When he got to mine, a set of building blocks and a children's book about families, he climbed into my lap and hugged me tight. Thank you, Grandma. I love you so much. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you could ever know. Grandma, Connor said, his face suddenly serious. Daddy told me that my first mommy can't be here, but that she loves me. Is that true? It's true, I said carefully, aware that everyone in the room had gone quiet. Your first mommy made some mistakes and she's living somewhere else now, but she does love you very much. Will I ever meet her? Maybe someday when you're older if you want to, but you know what, Connor? Family isn't just about the people who gave birth to you. Family is about the people who show up and love you every day. Like you and Daddy and Mommy Sarah? Exactly like that. And like Emma and baby Carol and all the people in this room who love you. Okay, Connor said, accepting this explanation with the easy resilience of childhood. Can I have cake now? Yes, you can, I said, laughing through tears. As the party continued around me, I'd fawn my tapper percussion that could be groomed. And I would tuban or replam rallied around me. Iberetikin at the kempero, badan said begant from him. So pinin it tied up. Iramur that Francidia was idotherin. That giving up on crumb trust entirely means giving up on connection and love. I'd learned that protecting yourself and your family isn't selfish. It's necessary. That speaking up about fraud and abuse isn't vindictive. It's courageous. I'd learned that healing from betrayal takes time and effort and the willingness to sit with uncomfortable truths. A rebelled family can survive almost anything if there's honesty and commitment that bound fight. It's Mozart's counts, Breitgard. That evening after the party ended and everyone had gone home, Marcus walked me to my car, Connor asleep on his shoulder and baby Carol in Sarah's arms behind us. Mom, he said quietly, I need you to know something. What you did for us, fighting for Connor when I was too blind to see the danger, it saved his life. Probably saved my life too. I'll never be able to repay that debt. You don't owe me anything, Marcus. I did what any mother would do. I protected my child. Not any mother, Marcus said. A lot of mothers would have given up when I shut you out, would have paid the fraudulent bills to keep the peace, would have prioritized their own comfort over their child's safety. You didn't do that. You fought even when it cost you everything. Because you and Connor are worth fighting for, always. I know that now, and I'm gonna make sure Connor knows it too. I'm gonna make sure he grows up understanding that his grandma loved him so much she took on the world to keep him safe. Just raise him to be kind and honest and brave. That's all the thanks I need. I will. I promise. As I drove home through the Portland evening, I thought about Vanessa's letter and her hope for redemption. I thought about Margaret Thornton and the other network members, some of whom were serving long prison sentences for their crimes. I thought about all the families who'd been victimized by these fraud schemes, some of whom had recovered and moved forward, others who'd been destroyed by the betrayal. And I thought about my own family, imperfect and complicated but built on a foundation of truth and love that had proven strong enough to withstand the worst kind of betrayal. The story of how I became a grandmother was nothing like I'd imagined. There was no joyful hospital visit, no first photos with my newborn grandson, no celebrations with family. Instead, there was fraud and betrayal, court battles and criminal investigations, fear and anger and grief. But there was also resilience and courage, the rebuilding of trust, the creation of a family stronger for having been tested, and ultimately, the triumph of love over manipulation, of truth over lies, of family over fraud. Connor would grow up knowing his origin story, knowing that his grandmother had fought for him before she ever held him, knowing that his father had chosen truth over comfort, knowing that family means showing up even when things are impossibly hard. He would carry those lessons with him, and maybe they would make him stronger, braver, more compassionate. As I pulled into my driveway and saw the security lights I'd installed come on, I realized that I was no longer afraid. The criminals who targeted my family were in prison, the threats had been neutralized, and we were safe. But more than that, I was no longer afraid of being hurt or betrayed again, because I'd learned that I could survive it, could fight back, could rebuild. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd ever known, strong enough to take on fraud networks and court systems, strong enough to fight for family even when family was fighting against me, strong enough to speak truth to power and demand justice, strong enough to love a grandson I'd been prevented from meeting and to build a relationship with him despite the obstacles. That strength hadn't come from being unbreakable, it had come from breaking and choosing to put myself back together. From facing my worst fears and discovering I could survive them, from losing what I thought I couldn't live without and finding I could not only live but thrive. The next morning, I woke to a text from Marcus, a photo of Connor at breakfast wearing a shirt that said, "My grandma is my hero." The message below read, "He picked it out himself. said he wanted everyone at school to know how awesome his grandma is. Love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. I saved that photo and that message and knebejoliever, the courtum wording. With Appelham. Whenomwordy orption to Bakamurda, Kerman. I Winneberg. We fank Kusinavare, Sitrakim. Dingath had Bikad saved a child's life, that fighting back had dismantled a criminal network, that refusing to be silent in the face of fraud had protected not just my family but dozens of other families who might have been targeted next. And I would remember that the greatest act of love isn't always the gentlest. Sometimes it's the fiercest to kind that refused to come it next. And I would remember that the greatest act of love isn't always the gentlest. Sometimes it's the fiercest, the kind that refused to belth, evil eighth, it wefe of. And in the end, isn't that what being a grandmother is really about? Not just the sweet moments of rocking babies and reading stories, though those are precious, but the fierce protection, the unwavering advocacy, the refusal to let anything harm the children we love. That's the legacy I wanted to leave for Connor. Not just the memory of birthday parties and bedtime stories, but the knowledge that when it mattered most, when his safety was threatened and his future was uncertain, his grandmother had stood between him and danger and refused to move. That's a legacy worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, worth every difficult choice I'd made and every painful consequence I'd faced. And as I looked ahead to the years to come, to watching Connor grow up safe and loved, to being part of Marcus's healing and his new family's joy, to the possibility of more grandchildren and more opportunities to love and protect and nurture, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just happiness or relief or even pride, but a deep sense of peace, the peace that comes from knowing you did the right thing, the hard thing, that mattered. My name is Carol Martinez, and this is the story of how I became a grandmother by fighting fraud, facing down criminals, and learning that sometimes the greatest love requires the greatest courage. If you're watching this and you've experienced fraud from a family member, if you've been manipulated or stolen from or betrayed by someone you trusted, I want you to know that speaking up isn't vindictive, it's self-protection. That pursuing justice isn't selfish, it's necessary. That protecting yourself and your span it's love in action. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for refusing to be victimized. Don't let anyone convince you that family loyalty means tolerating criminal behavior, and don't ever let anyone tell you that love requires you to accept abuse, manipulation, or fraud. Real love, healthy love, honest love, it protects and defends and stands up for what's right even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And if that means some relationships end, if that means some people choose to side with the abuser instead of the victim, if that means you lose people you thought would always be there, well, those losses, as painful as they are, make room for healthier relationships built on truth and respect and genuine care. 5 years later, I can tell you that the family I have now is smaller than it once was but infinitely stronger, built on honesty instead of manipulation, on choice instead of obligation, on love that's been tested and proven real, and that's worth everything I went through to get here. Connor is thriving, Marcus is healing, our family is safe, and the criminals who targeted us are behind bars where they belong. That's not vindictiveness, that's justice. And I'll never apologize for demanding it.